The smell of burning wood wafts through the air, carrying with it the acrid tang of damp stone and charred earth. It's a familiar scent in the cramped common room of the local tavern, where patrons huddle around roaring fires to pass the cold winter nights. Outside, snow crunches beneath the boots of villagers hurrying home from market, 17 pence an ounce for salted beef, just about within reach for most families. The temperature's a bitter -2 degrees Celsius, biting at exposed skin and making eyes water in the chill air. In this world of medieval England, life expectancy is low. 1 in 5 children doesn't survive to adulthood. A harsh reality weighed heavily on the minds of villagers like Alice Cleave, who made her living tending to the sick and injured as a healer's apprentice. What if you were tasked with tilling the same fields for 12 hours each day? What if every decision was dictated by necessity rather than choice? What if one misstep could mean life or death? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. In the darkness of your bedroom, the clock on your nightstand ticks away with quiet persistence. The scent of stale bread wafts through the air, carried on a damp breeze that seeps into every nook and cranny of your cloak. You breathe deeply, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle in as you step out of the morning mist and into the village. You've been walking for hours, following the narrow dirt path that winds its way up to the small cluster of cottages on the hillside. The thatched roofs are a soft mossy green, their curves softened by the overhanging eaves. Smoke drifts lazily from the chimneys, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. You've been invited to join your friend's family for dinner, and you're running late. You quicken your pace, feeling a bit embarrassed as you hurry up the path. The sound of laughter carries on the breeze, mingling with the clucking of chickens and the lowing of cattle in the nearby fields. As you approach the cottage, you notice that the door is slightly ajar. You push it open, calling out a greeting to let them know you've arrived. Inside, the fire is burning brightly, casting shadows on the walls as your friend's mother stirs something over the hearth. The air inside is thick with cooking smells, roasting meat, boiled vegetables, and the faint tang of herbs from the nearby garden. You breathe deeply, feeling a rumble in your stomach that seems to grow louder by the second. Your friend's father looks up from his work at the loom, nodding in greeting as you take off your cloak. "Ah, good timing," he says with a smile. "The stew is just about ready." You hang your cloak on the hook near the door and make your way over to the fire, running a hand through your hair to smooth out any tangles. Your friend's mother hands you a warm loaf of bread from the baking stone, and you take it gratefully as she gestures for you to sit. The meal is simple but satisfying: roasted mutton with boiled vegetables and some crusty bread on the side. You eat in silence at first, savoring the flavors and textures of each bite. Your friend's father breaks the silence by asking about your day, listening intently as you recount your morning spent tending to the village gardens. The afternoon sun casts a warm glow through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in its rays. You watch lazily, feeling your eyelids grow heavy with contentment as the conversation ebbs and flows around you. Your friend's mother gets up occasionally to stir something on the fire or fetch another loaf of bread from the oven. As dinner wears on, the talk turns to news from nearby villages, rumors of a new lord in the area, changes in the local markets, and gossip about a wedding planned for next month. You listen intently, absorbing each detail like a sponge soaking up water. Your friend's mother excuses herself eventually, saying she needs to tend to some laundry outside before it gets too dark. As she leaves, your friend's father leans over and starts telling you in hushed tones about the strange occurrences on his land: tools gone missing, crops trampled overnight, and an inexplicable feeling of unease that hangs over everything like a cloud. You listen attentively as he pours out his concerns, nodding sympathetically even though you don't have any answers to offer. The afternoon light casts long shadows across the room now, illuminating the intricate patterns on your friend's mother's spinning wheel and highlighting the rough-hewn texture of the wooden table. Time seems to stretch out in these quiet moments, time spent sitting by the fire, savoring each bite, listening to stories. You feel a sense of peace settle over you as the shadows grow longer outside, and the room grows quieter with each passing moment. The last wisps of daylight are fading now, casting an eerie glow through the window. Your friend's father leans back in his chair, rubbing the weariness from his eyes. The fire crackles softly, sending a gentle warmth through the air as you settle into the evening routine, your friend helping with the dishes while her mother folds up the day's laundry outside. You sit quietly for a moment, watching the flames dance and listening to the sounds of domesticity drifting in from just beyond the door. It's moments like these that make life feel real, not some distant memory or dusty page in an old book, but something tangible you can wrap your hands around. As the darkness gathers outside, it's easy to lose track of time, losing yourself in the soft murmur of voices and the gentle hum of contentment. The fire seems to grow quieter too, its embers dying down as the evening wears on, a slow-burning flame that eventually flickers out completely when you least expect it. The darkness gathering outside is almost palpable now, like an unseen presence waiting in the wings for its cue to enter. You can feel it settling over everything. Even the fire itself seems subdued and calm, as if anticipating some peaceful slumber. Your friend's mother calls from just beyond the door that dinner is done, but you're not quite ready yet. Your friend helps her father clear the table while you linger by the fireplace, letting your gaze wander through the shadows where they fall on the walls. As you stand by the fireplace, your eyes scan the room, taking in the warm glow of the flames and the soft murmur of conversation coming from the kitchen. You notice a faint scent wafting through the air, not quite like anything you're familiar with, but something earthy and rich nonetheless. Your friend's father is busily clearing the table, his movements economical and practiced as he stacks plates and bowls into a nearby chest. Your friend notices your lingering presence by the fire and ambles over to join you, saying in a low voice, "Mum says dinner's done, I'll get it." They nod toward the kitchen door, which is slightly ajar, allowing a sliver of warm light to spill out onto the floor. The murmur of conversation grows louder as your friend heads off to fetch the meal. As you wait, your gaze drifts back into the shadows on the walls, where they seem to grow longer and more intricate with every passing moment. You spot a faint outline that might be a chair or perhaps just a trick of the light. The fire crackles softly, casting flickering shadows across the stone floor. Just then, your friend reappears in the doorway, a steaming tray clutched in their hand. "Here we go," they say with a grin, setting down the platter on the nearby table. Your stomach growls in anticipation as you catch the scent of roasting meat wafting from the dish, something like beef or mutton, but not quite. The flavors are more robust than anything you're used to. As your friend takes their seat at the table, they beckon you over with a nod toward an empty chair. You take your place beside them, and together you dig into the meal. The food is rich and satisfying, far more flavorful than anything from back home. Your host's family seems genuinely pleased to have guests, though there's something formal about their interactions. Your friend glances at you with an inquiring expression as they chew on a mouthful of meat. You take another bite, savoring the flavors and trying not to think too hard about the unfamiliar surroundings. "What do you call this dish?" you ask your friend, gesturing toward the platter. "Ah, Mum's recipe," they reply with a smile. She makes it special for guests. As if on cue, their mother appears from the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel and smiling warmly at both of you. She takes in the nearly empty tray and nods approvingly. "How was dinner? Was everything to your liking?" You take another bite before responding, trying not to be too obvious about how much you're enjoying this strange new food. "It's different," you admit, which seems to satisfy their mother for some reason. Just then, the door creaks open and a figure slips into the room. This newcomer is shorter than your friend, with skin that looks more like bark or rough-hewn stone. Their hair appears matted and unkempt, possibly not just from being uncombed. They glance around the table before focusing on you, their eyes narrowing slightly as they take in your presence. The air seems to grow a shade colder for an instant, though this might be entirely due to some trick of perception. The newcomer's gaze flicks back and forth between you and the rest of the family before coming to rest once more on yourself. You sense that there's something important being transmitted through their unblinking stare. "Ah, welcome," your friend says after a pause. "This is Piers, my cousin." Their mother offers him a nod in greeting, but her expression seems somewhat formal. It takes you a moment to realize why. The newcomer isn't quite dressed like everyone else. He wears dark brown breeches and an untucked tunic that looks hand-stitched from coarse wool. As if aware of this observation, Piers glances down at his clothes before meeting your eye once more, though now with something almost hurt in their expression. It's impossible to tell whether he senses a challenge or simply feels self-conscious about his attire. The air remains charged for an instant longer as everyone around the table waits for some response from you. "What do you say next?" Note, I'll keep adding more to this story following your prompts. The sweet, pungent smell of roasting bread wafts through the air, carrying with it memories of warmth and comfort. You breathe deeply, feeling the gentle morning haze lift from your lungs as you step into the bustling market square. The sun is just starting to peek over the thatched roofs, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. As you make your way through the crowd, the sounds of haggling merchants and clucking chickens assault your ears, creating a cacophony that's both familiar and overwhelming. You weave between stalls selling everything from fresh produce to hand-woven tapestries, dodging baskets and bundles with practiced ease. The aroma of roasting bread grows stronger, drawing you towards the nearby bakery. Inside, rows of wooden bins overflow with freshly baked loaves, their crusty exteriors glistening in the morning light. The baker, a stout woman named Alice, greets you warmly as she works her magic on a new batch of dough. Good morrow. Come for some bread, she asks, not looking up from her task as she expertly shapes a delicate loaf into perfect symmetry. You nod, running your eyes over the array of offerings. I'll take a small one, please, you reply, trying to remember if you've got any coins left in your pouch. Alice hands you a warm, fragrant loaf wrapped in a piece of linen, and you feel a pang of satisfaction as you tuck it into your basket. The smell of fresh bread is like nothing else. It's the scent of home, of comfort, of security. As you continue through the market, you notice that several stalls are abuzz with talk about something called the missing grooms. It seems there have been a string of unsolved disappearances in the local village, all men who were scheduled to get married this week. Some folks think it might be the work of witches or demons, while others blame a rival family. You shake your head, chuckling wryly at the absurdity of it all. Oh, witches! Demons, you mutter under your breaths. I reckon they've just lost their mates in the tavern. A gruff-voiced merchant nearby overhears and leans over to whisper, "Ah, ye think that's funny, do ye? Well, I'll tell ye this, me own cousin went missin' last week, and we're still searchin' high and low. There's no laughter in these matters. The sun climbs higher now, casting long shadows across the market square as people start to stir towards their daily tasks. You continue on your way, trying not to get caught up in any of the gossip or rumors. Nearby stands an elderly woman selling what looks like a tangle of old rags and scraps. She introduces herself as Agnes, a local seamstress who's been making clothes for the village folk for nigh on 40 years. Good day, young one, she says, her eyes twinkling with warmth. I see ye have got some fresh bread in your basket. Would ye like to haggle over it? I'll give ye a fine deal if ye're willing to take on a bit o' work. You hesitate for a moment before agreeing to help Agnes sort through the scraps she's gathered from last night's market. As you begin to pick apart the tangled mess, you notice that every scrap seems to have its own story, a piece of faded ribbon with what looks like a wedding dress design on it, an old tattered shoe with a single glassy button still attached. Agnes watches your work with a keen eye, occasionally offering words of encouragement or criticism as needed. The sunlight filters through the market stalls above you now, casting intricate patterns across Agnes' hands and face. I used to make clothes for most o' these folk, she says softly, her eyes clouding over at some distant memory. Wedding dresses mostly. There's something about a woman in white that brings back memories, I reckon. As you continue sorting through the scraps with Agnes, the morning sun slowly gives way to afternoon shadows. The market square is starting to empty out now, with people dispersing towards their daily tasks. You notice one stallkeeper struggling to keep her wares upright as she packs up her stand for the day, a young girl who looks barely 12 years old. As you approach, Agnes raises an eyebrow and says quietly, "Ah, that's Elsie, just got married herself last week." Elsie catches your eye and smiles weakly before busily packing away what little remains of her stock. The smell of bread has given way to the scent of dust and old wood now as you watch her tidy up. As you help Agnes load the remaining scraps into a basket, the sounds of the market, the chatter, haggling merchants, clucking chickens all start to fade away. You find yourself lost in thought for a moment, wondering about Elsie's wedding day and what it must have been like for her to be one of the few women from our village who still gets married off. The silence between you and Agnes is comfortable now as she hands over several small bundles wrapped in cloth. Some "Oh, these scraps ye can use for yourself, lass," she says gently. The softness of the material against your skin feels like a gentle caress. You nod gratefully before thanking her and continuing on towards. As you nod your thanks and continue on towards the village inn, Agnes' parting gift settles softly against your skin. The bundle feels substantial enough to be useful, but not so heavy as to be unwieldy, a perfect compromise between generosity and practicality. You tuck it into the folds of your cloak, feeling a small sense of security, knowing you have something tangible to rely on in this strange new world. The village inn comes into view ahead, its timber-framed walls bearing scars from countless winters and summers past. Smoke drifts lazily out of the stone chimney, carrying with it the savory sense of roasting meat and baking bread. Your stomach growls in anticipation as you push open the door, ducking beneath the low-hanging beam that marks the entrance. Inside, the inn is warm and well lit, its air thick with the smell of smoke and sweat. A fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the walls as the patrons go about their business. You scan the room, taking in the assortment of faces, some you recognize from your journey so far, while others are new to your eyes. At a table near the fire, Brother Edwin sits hunched over a mug of ale, his brow furrowed in concentration. Nearby, Mistress Ilara chats animatedly with one of her regular clients, a gruff but affable man named Grimbold who looks as though he's seen every battle ever fought on English soil. You make your way towards the bar, nodding greetings to those you pass by. The innkeeper, a jovial woman named Alice, greets you warmly and begins inquiring about your needs. You take up a spot at the end of the bar, ordering a hot meal and a tankard of ale as Alice busies herself preparing your food. As you wait for your order to arrive, you notice that the atmosphere within the inn seems subdued compared to previous nights. Conversation is stilted, with many glancing around nervously or speaking in hushed tones. You overhear snippets about missing grooms from nearby farms, men who'd left their homes early this morning never to be seen again. A commotion breaks out near the fire as Grimbold rises to his feet, pointing a thick finger at Brother Edwin. "You're not thinking of putting yourself forward for that reward, are ye?" he asks gruffly, voice low but laced with an undercurrent of warning. Brother Edwin looks up from his ale, eyes narrowing slightly behind the rim of his spectacles. "What do you mean by this, Grimbold?" "I'm merely offering to assist in any way I can." Grimbold snorts in derision. "Oh, as is. Ye'll be the one getting yourself killed, that's what ye'll be doing." Those grooms weren't just ordinary men, they were good folk with families dependent on 'em. "And now ye're talkin' about goin' after whatever took 'em." A murmur of agreement ripples through the crowd as Grimbold gestures toward Brother Edwin, his face red with indignation. You realize that not everyone in this village is convinced by the young monk's offer to help investigate. Alice intervenes before things escalate further, placing a steaming plate of food and mug of ale in front of you. "Eat up, lass, there'll be time for talkin' later." Her eyes flicker toward Grimbold and Brother Edwin, then back to you with a gentle warning. You take her advice, focusing on the savory scents wafting from your meal as Alice busies herself refilling mugs around the inn. The atmosphere remains tense but controlled, with some patrons whispering among themselves while others appear outright frightened by Grimbold's outburst. As you eat and ponder the growing unease within the village, a commotion erupts outside, loud voices raised in argument, followed by a sudden silence as if someone has attempted to intervene. Your heart skips a beat as you wonder what might have happened now, knowing full well that your safety depends on staying alert in this medieval world. The door creaks open and two guards enter the inn, their faces grim as they scan the room before focusing on Grimbold. "You're coming with us," one of them says curtly, hand resting on the hilt of his sword. Grimbold's face darkens, but he doesn't resist, rising to follow the guards out into the night. The tension within the inn dissipates slightly as patrons breathe a collective sigh of relief, though it seems that whatever took place outside has only added fuel to an already burning fire. As you consider your next move, Brother Edwin sidles up beside you at the bar, his eyes fixed intently on the spot where Grimbold was standing. "I fear we have no choice but to investigate these disappearances," he says quietly. "But for now, let us finish our meal and speak of this in private." His words carry a sense of determination that catches your attention as you wonder what exactly lies ahead, both within the village and beyond its boundaries. The inn's silence grows thicker with every passing minute, punctuated only by the crackle of flames from the hearth. You feel an undercurrent of unease running beneath the surface, one that will soon boil over into a maelstrom of secrets, danger, and mystery waiting to be unraveled. The smell of salted fish wafts through the air, a pungent mix of ocean and preservation that clings to your skin like a damp shroud. You're standing on the bustling docks of medieval England's major port city, surrounded by rows of wooden warehouses and sail-studded ships chugging in with every tide. The cries of gulls overhead mingle with the shouts of merchants haggling over cargo prices, their voices growing hoarse from repetition as they jostle for position near the market stalls. A faint tang of vinegar hangs heavy above the fishmonger's stand, where a young lad is arranging fresh catches on wooden slats. You weave through the crowd, following the scent to its source, an alleyway between warehouses where a small cooperage has set up shop amidst the detritus of imported goods. A sign creaks in the breeze above the workshop door, "Thomas Ap Rees, Master Cooper," while below it, wooden tubs brim with dark liquid and staved barrels lean precariously against each other. Inside the cramped cooperage, Thomas himself hammers away at a half-finished barrel, sweat glistening on his forehead as he works through the morning's light. The air is thick with sawdust and wood shavings, which cling to your clothes like static electricity when you brush past him. "What business have ye here?" Thomas asks gruffly, setting down his mallet to survey the crowd milling about outside. He eyes you warily. A stranger in this close-knit community isn't often welcome. You're unsure how to answer. This isn't your usual haunt, and you weren't looking for trouble when you stumbled upon it. But something catches Thomas's attention. A look of faint recognition flickers across his face before he nods curtly and invites you inside with a nod towards the shadows. The interior is narrow, only one person could stand comfortably beside him at any given time, but well organized, with neatly stacked supplies lining shelves against two walls. A row of half-finished barrels sits along another wall, awaiting Thomas's expert touch before being dispatched to the ships that need them. In a corner, a collection of strange tools gathers dust. Wooden wedges, curved mallets, and an assortment of adzes used for shaping barrel staves. Thomas motions you closer as he resumes work on his latest project, a large cask bound for somewhere in Flanders, judging by the intricately painted symbols etched into its side. "I've got to get this one done today," he says, voice low and steady. "Ship's leaving with or without it." You watch him hammer away at the wood, his movements economical yet precise as he navigates the intricate patterns of stave-to-stave jointing. The smell of freshly cut wood and linseed oil hangs heavy in the air, mingling with sweat to create a scent reminiscent of summer afternoons spent working outdoors. Beyond Thomas's workshop lies a narrow alleyway, perhaps 20 feet wide at most, where discarded cargo crates lean against walls or sit stacked haphazardly on one another. A makeshift rope pulley system creaks in the breeze above, carrying bundled hay to and from storage rooms along the opposite side of the dock. You take note that no one seems particularly fussed about the mess. Locals have grown accustomed to living amidst it all. Trash litters every available space. Fish bones, discarded cordage, rags used for cleaning up spills, all are thrown carelessly onto the pile without much thought given their eventual fate. Thomas looks up from his work and catches your eye with a hint of curiosity. His expression suggests he's wondering what exactly you're doing there, but he doesn't ask again. Perhaps it's clear you'll be staying for at least another few minutes. As Thomas returns to hammering away at the barrel's staves, a thought occurs. Why is this place so full of discarded materials? And where do all these salted fish heads go once they're offloaded from ship to dock? You notice that each and every one of those barrels, regardless of size or destination, carries its own unique symbol, something to identify it as belonging to whichever merchant sent it along. Some symbols look like a crude drawing of the cross, others appear more intricate, interlocking circles with points in between them. Thomas notices your interest in the painted symbols and nods towards the large cask sitting on an adjacent workbench, awaiting its turn for Thomas's touch. The symbol etched into that one is unlike any you've seen before. It features what looks like a stylized fish head flanked by interlocking rings. He leans against his tools to survey your reaction as he explains. Those symbols keep the merchants from stealing each other blind when they're on their travels. With an almost nonchalant wave of his hand, Thomas gestures towards another stack of crates nearby, where more casks await shipment. Each carries its own symbol. Some are painted in colors you've never seen before. He continues to hammer away at the barrel staves as if this is all perfectly normal conversation for him. You see, there's a particular symbol used by merchants trading with Flanders. I think it's called de Sint-Leven. Anyways, they seem keen on these fish heads, or so I'm told. Thomas looks up from his work once more, this time to study you as if he expects some sort of answer or reaction. It seems you're stuck in neutral for now, unable to ask questions about the intricacies behind those painted symbols, but too curious not to wonder what exactly lies at their heart. He takes another strike at a particularly stubborn stave before focusing on his task once more, eyes scanning every inch of wood as if he's trying to coax some hidden secret from it. As he works, his mind begins to wander back to the conversation he had with Brother Edwin earlier that day. The old monk's eyes had seemed to hold a secret, and it wasn't until they were alone in the scriptorium that he'd finally spoken of the strange symbols etched into the wooden panels. "What do you make of them, brother?" Edwin had asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen such markings before," Thomas replied, "but I've never been able to decipher their meaning." "Some sort of code, perhaps." Edwin's eyes had locked onto his, and for an instant, Thomas thought he saw a flicker of fear there. "No, no, it's not that at all." Thomas leaned in closer, sensing that the old monk was about to reveal something important. "Tell me, Brother Edwin," he coaxed. The monk took a deep breath before speaking in hushed tones. "Those symbols are said to be a warning, Thomas. A sign of dark happenings within these very walls." Thomas's curiosity had gotten the better of him then, and he'd pressed for more information. But now, as his chisel struck another stubborn stave, he couldn't shake the feeling that Edwin was hiding something. He glanced up at the wooden panels again, this time noticing a faint scratch on one of them, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, but it seemed out of place among the intricate carvings. He set his tools aside and rose from his stool to take a closer look. As he peered into the corner where the scratching caught his attention, Thomas noticed something else, a small piece of parchment tucked between two planks. It was folded and appeared untouched for some time, possibly even years. Intrigued, Thomas carefully extracted it from its hiding spot and unfolded the paper to reveal a crude drawing. It depicted a group of people gathered around what looked like a large cauldron or vat. One figure stood apart from the rest, holding an enormous fish head aloft in triumph. Below this scene was written, "Forsooth, the tides of providence shall deliver us unto our next great feast." Thomas's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of it all. What did a drawing like this have to do with anything? Was it some sort of jest or perhaps an omen? As he pondered these questions, the door creaked open behind him. Brother Edwin stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Thomas's hand, which still grasped the parchment. "Ah, I was looking for you," Edwin said softly, not attempting to hide his concern from his expression. "You seem to have found something." Thomas felt a flutter of unease as he realized how easily he'd let himself get distracted while working, and now, it seemed, he might be in trouble again. "The parchment," Thomas offered hesitantly, holding up the paper for Edwin's inspection. The old monk took it from him with an almost desperate eagerness and began examining it closely. For a few moments they stood there in silence as Edwin studied the drawing, his eyes locked onto every detail. Then, without warning, he crumpled to one side, dropping the parchment on the floor with such force that Thomas thought for a moment he'd been struck down by some unseen force. Thomas rushed forward to help him up, but found himself face to face with an expression so grave it was almost as if Edwin had witnessed something unspeakable. "We can't talk here," the monk whispered urgently, grasping his arm and trying to draw Thomas away from the door. As they stumbled out into the darkening evening air, Thomas couldn't help but wonder what else lay hidden within those walls, secrets waiting patiently for him to uncover them. The scent of damp earth and wood smoke wafts through the air as Thomas steps out into the evening, his worn boots crunching on the gravel path that leads back to the village. He takes a deep breath, feeling the cool mist on his face, and gazes up at the darkening sky. As he walks, the houses of the village come alive with soft light candles flickering in windows like tiny lanterns, welcoming him home from another long day's work. Thomas passes by the thatched roof of the local baker, the sweet aroma of fresh bread wafting out into the evening air and making his stomach growl with hunger. He makes his way to his own small cottage on the outskirts of the village, where a faint smell of cooking oil lingers in the air. Inside, he finds his wife Alice stirring a pot over an open flame, her face aglow with warmth as she cooks dinner for their family. The fire crackles and spits, casting shadows across the rough-hewn stone walls. Thomas drops his bundle of tools on the floor beside him, feeling a small weight lift from his shoulders. The day's work is done after all. He hangs up his hat on its hook by the door, watching as Alice adds some dried herbs to their stew, releasing a fragrant steam that makes his mouth water. The evening air carries an almost imperceptible chill, and Thomas shivers slightly as he takes off his leather apron, hanging it on a nearby peg. The stone floor beneath his feet is cool and damp, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, but tonight it feels especially inviting after the long day's work outdoors. Alice finishes her stirring and turns to him with a smile, wiping the sweat from her forehead as she surveys their meal. "Ah, Thomas, you're just in time. The stew will be ready soon." She gestures towards a small wooden table in front of them, two bowls already set out, awaiting only the hot food. Thomas takes off his gloves and gives her hand a quick squeeze before heading over to join Alice by the fire. He plops down beside her on a three-legged stool, running a tired hand through his hair as he leans back against the stone wall behind him. The warmth from the hearth seeps into his bones, chasing away some of the chill that lingered in his muscles after the day's work. Thomas takes another deep breath, letting the scents and sounds wash over him: wood smoke, cooking oil, baking bread, all mingling with the damp earth outside. As they sit there together, the silence is almost palpable, like a soft blanket wrapped around them both. The only sound comes from the fire, its gentle crackles providing a soothing background hum to their quiet evening meal. But Thomas's thoughts are not so tranquil. His mind keeps drifting back to the mysteries hidden within those old castle walls he visited today. He wonders what other secrets lay waiting for him in dusty corners and cobweb-shrouded chambers. As Thomas pushed his trencher away from him, his stomach was still churning with unease. The evening meal had been uneventful, but his mind refused to settle on anything other than the mysteries that haunted the castle's ancient stones. He glanced around at his companions, who were engrossed in their own conversations, and knew he couldn't share his concerns with them. Outside, the darkness was gathering like a shroud over the village. The wind carried an autumnal chill, and Thomas could see the servants scurrying about, lighting torches to illuminate the pathway leading out of the great hall. It wouldn't be long before night descended fully, and he knew that without a fire burning brightly in his chambers, it would be as good as sleeping outside. Thomas pushed back from the table and stood up, signaling to one of the servants who hovered nearby. "Bring me some wood," he said, trying to keep his tone light despite his growing unease. The servant nodded hastily and scurried off towards the woodpile near the entrance hall, leaving Thomas alone at the table once more. He watched as the other diners continued their laughter and conversation, feeling like an outsider among them. Thomas's thoughts returned to the castle's hidden passages and chambers he'd explored earlier that day. He'd been searching for a specific manuscript, rumored to be stored somewhere within the castle walls, but his search had yielded nothing more substantial than dusty scrolls and yellowed parchment scraps. Still, something about those narrow corridors and musty rooms lingered with him, an unsettling sense of secrets yet unexplored. As if drawn by some unseen force, Thomas found himself rising from his chair once again. He strode across the great hall towards the entrance, where a few scattered torches cast flickering shadows on the stone floor. Outside, the wind stung his face as he made his way to the woodpile, searching for the servant who'd gone in search of firewood. "Hey," Thomas called out into the darkness, just as a figure emerged from behind one of the nearby buildings with an armload of logs slung over their shoulder. "I need you to help me get some more wood inside." The young man, whom Thomas vaguely recognized as one of the castle's apprentices, looked up at him warily before nodding and trudging off towards the great hall once more, his load clattering against the stone floor. Thomas watched them disappear into the darkness, feeling a shiver run down his spine. Something wasn't quite right about this evening, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Perhaps it was just the eerie silence that had settled over the castle after dinner, or maybe it was something more substantial, like an unspoken expectation lurking in every corner. He shook off the feeling and followed the apprentice into the great hall, careful not to startle anyone else as he slipped inside. The fire crackled softly on its pedestal, casting a warm glow across the room that helped ease his growing unease. Thomas glanced around at his companions once more, still engrossed in their conversations, before nodding and letting out a silent sigh. As he made his way back to his seat, one of the castle's elderly retainers caught his eye from across the hall. Old Alfred, who'd seen generations come and go within these very walls, raised an eyebrow at Thomas as if asking silently, "Are you quite all right?" Thomas nodded hastily before looking away, trying not to attract more attention than necessary. But that single glance had awakened a spark of doubt in him. What did the old man know about this castle's secrets? Had he been avoiding sharing something crucial during their conversation earlier? The questions swirled through Thomas's mind like autumn leaves rustling against the stone walls, refusing to settle into any coherent pattern. And as he slid back into his chair and forced himself to focus on the evening meal ahead of him, a faint unease continued to simmer beneath the surface, an unspoken understanding that tonight was not going to be just another ordinary night in this ancient fortress. The soft crackle of firewood being placed onto the flames nearby pulled Thomas's gaze back towards his seat. He turned to see one of the servants arranging more logs on the pedestal, causing a warm, golden light to spread outward into the room like an inviting sanctuary from whatever shadows lurked outside. The atmosphere relaxed subtly in response, as if this simple act had somehow tamed the night itself. Thomas watched for a moment before turning his attention back towards the warmth of the fire and letting out another gentle sigh. Little did he know that small flame was about to be put to an unexpected test. As Thomas settled back into his chair, the warmth of the fire danced across his face, casting a golden glow on the rough-hewn stone walls of their small cottage. It was a comforting routine he'd grown accustomed to over the years. The quiet evening hours spent in solitude with only the crackling flames and the occasional hoot of an owl outside for company. The air inside the cottage was thick with the scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and something faintly metallic from the nearby forge where Thomas's brother-in-law worked. It was a familiar smell that reminded him of home, but tonight it carried an undercurrent of anxiety he couldn't quite shake. Outside, the wind had picked up, rustling through the leaves of the trees surrounding their village like a restless child playing tricks in the darkness. The branches creaked and swayed ominously, making Thomas's skin prickle with unease. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, trying to find a more settled position. Just then there was a sudden burst of light from outside, a flash that illuminated the darkened sky like a brief, fierce kiss. The fire crackled and spat as if responding to some unseen challenge, sending sparks flying up towards the rafters. "What in?" Thomas muttered to himself, his words lost in the howling wind. He stood up hastily, peering out into the night through the small window above the hearth. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a figure stumbling down the lane outside their cottage, huddled against the driving rain and buffeted by gusts that seemed to come from nowhere. As Thomas watched in growing unease, the stranger stumbled towards them, face raised to the sky as if calling out for help or comfort. The wind whipped through their hair like a wild animal's claws, threatening to tear it loose at any moment. Thomas hesitated for an instant before yanking open the door and stepping into the tempestuous night. Rain lashed down around him like needles, stinging his skin and blinding him with its ferocity. He squinted towards the figure stumbling towards them, trying to make out features through the driving raindrops. The stranger, a young woman, no more than 20 winters old, judging by her scrawny frame and wild tangle of hair, flung herself onto the doorstep as if seeking refuge from some greater horror. Thomas's first instinct was to push her away, to shout at her for disturbing their peace on such a foul night. But something about the desperation in her eyes stayed his hand. Maybe it was the memory of those long nights spent shivering by the fire, with little more than thin blankets and scraps of cloth between him and the biting cold. Or perhaps it was simply the knowledge that they had once lived through similar times themselves, when a day without a fire would be all but unthinkable. He ushered her inside, slamming shut the door behind them to contain some of the chaos outside. The woman collapsed onto their floor with an exhausted gasp, shaking rainwater from her hair like a dog after a swim. Thomas closed his eyes and let out another deep sigh as he watched her, this tiny, bedraggled creature who seemed so utterly lost in the darkness. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply huddled together by the fire, listening to its steady beat and letting the warmth seep into their chilled bones. The wind howled on outside like some ancient demon come to claim the village for itself, but within this small space, Thomas felt an unexpected sense of calm settle over him. It was as if that simple act of welcoming a stranger into his home had conjured up something primal and essential, a reminder that even in times of hardship and strife, there existed moments when kindness could be its own reward. The musty scent of damp wool clings to your skin like a shroud, a familiar comfort on this drizzly afternoon. You've spent hours hunched over the loom, fingers moving in practiced rhythm as you weave the coarse yarn into a sturdy fabric that will one day become someone's cloak or tunic. The weight of it all, the wool, the thread, the endless repetition, threatens to settle onto your shoulders like an additional burden. Your back protests with a faint ache as you straighten up and rub at the small of your spine. It's been days since you've had a chance to walk in the sun, feel its warmth seep into your bones. The cold rain that started this morning still clings to the stones outside, leaving everything feeling damp and clammy. You take a moment to stretch, letting your arms rise up towards the rafters as high as they'll go before you yawn, and let them drop back down to rest against the wooden frame of the loom. The creaking of the wood is like music in this quiet space. It's all that breaks the stillness. Your eyes wander around the small, cramped room where you've spent most of your waking hours for what feels like an eternity. A single candle on a nearby stool casts flickering shadows across the walls as it struggles to stay alight against the damp air. You think about replacing it with something more robust, maybe one from your brother's shop down by the river. But that would mean taking time off, venturing out into the rain. Instead, you let your gaze settle on the half-finished tunic draped over a nearby stool. The wool is a deep, rich brown that reminds you of autumn afternoons spent gathering acorns in the forest with your siblings when you were young and carefree. It's almost finished, just a few more rows to go before it'll be ready for delivery. You pick up one end of the tunic, feeling its weight settle into your hand as if it was a small animal nestling against your palm. The wool fibers press softly against your skin, sending tiny shivers down your arm as you run them through your fingers like a mother might with her child's hair on a quiet evening. Your eyes follow the threads of yarn that weave in and out of each other to create this sturdy fabric. The way they crisscross one another is both intricate and obvious at once. It's almost meditative watching as these simple threads combine to form something so practical, yet somehow also beautiful. As you stand there lost in thought, your fingers begin to move on autopilot, plucking stray yarns from the tunic and reweaving them back into place with a quiet ease born of repetition. Your mind drifts. Is it really going to rain all week? What if this downpour lasts till harvest time? Your brother's voice brings you back to reality as he enters the room behind you, his words dripping wet from the rain outside. Aren't you done yet? His tone is laced with a familiar patience that means more than any amount of scolding ever could. You turn to him sheepish and apologetic. Your hand still holds one end of the tunic as if it's an anchor, keeping you grounded in this space where time has been measured out in threads of yarn and loops of woolen fabric instead of days or weeks or seasons. Almost, you say finally, letting go of the tunic to gesture vaguely towards the half-finished length draped over the stool. Just a few more rows. Your words trail off as your brother nods knowingly. He's been there too, stuck in this never-ending cycle of creation and delivery until the very fabric of reality starts to feel like it's woven from threadbare excuses. Your hand trails back down to rest against the wooden frame of the loom once more, the weight of responsibility settling onto those fingers like a physical presence. But as you look over at your brother, his expression calm and understanding in the flickering candlelight, something inside shifts ever so slightly. It's not just about finishing this one tunic or meeting the next deadline. It's about sharing in these moments, this quiet exhaustion that comes from being part of a larger whole. As he heads out into the rain to fetch some more wool and thread for his own projects, you let your gaze settle back onto the half-finished length draped over the stool. The candle on its stand casts an ever-changing pattern across the walls, dark shapes that suddenly become familiar landmarks in this dimly lit space, where time is measured by the passing of shadows. You pick up a nearby spindle and begin to spin, letting the whirling thread dance through your fingers as it weaves a new rhythm into place. The sound of rain pattering against the roof above provides a soothing counterpoint, steady and predictable in its beat, while the flickering candlelight seems to grow stronger with each passing moment. It's almost peaceful. As you sit there, surrounded by the soft glow of candlelight and the gentle patter of rain against the roof, a sense of tranquility begins to wash over you. Your eyes grow heavy, your breathing slows, and your mind starts to wander into the realm of dreams. The woolen tunic that hangs across your lap, its threads worn smooth by countless generations of wearers, seems to draw you in with an otherworldly allure. Your gaze drifts towards the intricate patterns woven into the fabric, the subtle dance of colors, the delicate play of light and shadow as they seem to shift and writhe like living things. It's almost as if the very essence of nature has been distilled into these threads, imbuing them with a deep and abiding magic. As you watch, transfixed by the hypnotic rhythm of the patterns, your fingers begin to move of their own accord. They twitch and flex, as if beckoned by some unseen force to weave their own path through the intricate tapestry that lies before you. Your thumbs seem to remember a long-forgotten skill, one that speaks of ancient rituals and sacred practices honed over generations. Your hands dance across the fabric with an uncanny precision, tracing paths both deliberate and wild as they create new patterns that shimmer like moonlight on rippling water. The candle flame above seems to grow stronger still, casting eerie shadows on the walls as if awakened by your own secret knowledge. It's almost mesmerizing. Your breathing slows further, becoming a rhythmic accompaniment to the dance of threads under your fingers. Time itself appears to warp and bend around you, hours pass in what feels like mere moments, yet also seem to stretch out into an eternity as if trapped within some vast, slow-moving wheel. And then, without warning, it's over. Your hands fall still upon the fabric, leaving behind a tangled web of threads that seems to pulse with a life of its own. The room has grown darker, or perhaps your vision simply isn't what it used to be. A faint scent wafts through the air, smoke from the dying candle flame and something else. Earthy, rich, like damp soil beneath winter's first frost. Your gaze drifts upward towards a tapestry hanging near the window. It depicts scenes of hunting parties roaming across rolling hills, their dogs snapping at hares as they vanish into shadowy woods. You see an archer lowering his bowstring, releasing a swift arrow that finds its mark in the chest of a fleeing stag. But something about this scene seems. Your eyes strain to make sense of it, perhaps you're just not used to these colors anymore. The artist's hand has been heavy-handed with red, as if smearing blood across canvas like an overzealous novice. Or is that merely the fading light? The tapestry looms above you now, growing larger and more menacing by degrees. Colors bleed into one another in a macabre dance of violence, yet there's something almost beautiful about this madness, a strange affinity to the natural world as seen through some warped lens. Your mind begins to stumble towards questions that refuse answers. How did they weave such patterns? And what purpose served these intricate designs anyway? Oh, it seems inconsequential now. Time may be relative in your little bubble of peace and quiet, but it's clear this tapestry holds secrets you can no longer claim as yours. Somebody stirs in the corner, a presence you had almost forgotten existed outside the realm of candlelight and rain pattering against the roof above. The air grows charged with tension. An unspoken expectation hangs between you like something unsaid, like a message never fully expressed but lurking beneath every word. It's time for dinner, someone murmurs softly into your ear, as if the very sound has awakened some long dormant part of yourself that screams to be heard. The flickering candle flame trembles in response, casting shadows across walls and tapestries alike like ghostly fingers grasping at something unseen. You stir, slowly rising from the warmth that's enveloped you for what feels like an eternity, only to find your joints protesting with a loud clarity as if rebuking some forgotten dream. The chill of morning air seeps into your bones like a damp shroud, carrying with it the faint scent of wood smoke and something else, something earthier, more pungent, that lingers just beyond detection. You stir, slowly rising from the warmth that's enveloped you for what feels like an eternity, only to find your joints protesting with a loud clarity as if rebuking some forgotten dream. Your bed, a narrow pallet of straw and wool, creaks softly beneath you as you shift position. The wooden frame groans in sympathy, its worn joints complaining about the weight you've placed upon them once again. You lie back down, letting out a soft sigh that's absorbed by the thick pile of woolen blankets piled high above your head. Your gaze wanders to the small window set into one wall of the hut, where morning sunlight filters through the slats in thin fingers, casting intricate patterns on the floorboards below. The light is pale and diffuse, struggling to penetrate the gloom that clings to everything like a damp skin. You can see the faint outline of trees swaying gently outside. An occasional leaf or branch catches the eye as it dances in the breeze. Your thoughts turn to breakfast, but the prospect doesn't excite you quite yet. The fire's still smoldering from last night's embers, its dying flames crackling softly into a gentle hum that seems almost soothing after the silence of sleep. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and plant them firmly on the cold stone floor. Your toes curl against the rough texture as you stand up, feeling it like a slap in the face, or rather, like being slapped by an unseen hand with fingers made of frosty air. The chill seeps deep into your feet, making them ache slightly as you take your first tentative steps towards the fire pit at the center of the room. The hut's small kitchen area is cluttered and cramped, but you're familiar with every nook and cranny, from the crooked shelves where wooden spoons hang by their handles to the battered clay pot that serves as a makeshift mixing bowl. The air's thick with the scent of last night's stew, lingering like an echo in the stillness. You kneel beside the fire pit, using a piece of charred wood to poke at the embers until they spark back into life. A small flame erupts from the center of the heap, its light dancing up towards the rafters as it grows stronger and more steady. You let out a slow breath, feeling some of your stiffness ease as the warmth begins to seep into your bones. Next to you lies last night's leftovers, a wooden trencher holding what looks like about 3 days' worth of stew, its surface starting to dry out from being left uncovered too long. The meat's congealed on top now, and the aroma has grown stale in places. You sniff it cautiously before deciding that it'll do for breakfast. You take up your spoon, a wooden thing with one end chipped off at a sharp angle, and dip it into the stew. As you lift it to your mouth, the cold stoneware feels heavy against your lips, its texture unfamiliar in this moment of quiet morning calm. Your teeth scrape through the congealed meat as you take your first bite, releasing flavors that have been sitting dormant for too long. It's not bad, far from it, but there's something unsatisfying about eating yesterday's dinner again today. The flavors seem muted now, lacking in freshness and zing. The spoon hangs between bites, its edge digging into the wood as you let your thoughts wander back to last night. Memories of the village gathering still linger, where they discussed the recent increase in smallpox cases around the nearby town. Rumors whispered about a possible link to contaminated water sources or spoiled food supplies, though no one seemed certain what was causing it. You chew slowly, letting the flavors settle as your mind loops back over conversations from last night's gathering. It's a problem that seems so far removed now, especially in the quiet morning hours when all you can think about is getting fed and making it through another day of hard work on the land. Your stomach growls softly at the prospect of eating more stew, or rather, re-eating what's already been sitting there too long. You take up your spoon once more, dipping into the cold meal with a sense of resignation that feels almost tangible in this moment of quiet morning calm. As you eat on, the sun rises higher outside, casting longer shadows across the floorboards below until they seem to stretch and twist like living things, an illusion created by the flickering light from the fire. The sounds around you change too. Birds start their day's chorus outside, while inside the hut the only noises are your own chewing and the occasional creak of wood as something settles into place. Your meal finishes with a small sense of relief, more like the aftermath of a mild disappointment than anything else. You lean back on one elbow, letting your gaze wander up to the wooden beams above where morning light filters through in jagged fingers, casting an irregular pattern across the stone floor below. Time stretches out before you now, like an empty road leading off into uncertainty, but today's uncertainties are different from yesterday's or tomorrow's. Today is about surviving another day of hard work on the land, and for that reason alone it feels almost doable in this quiet morning calm. You wake up to an unfamiliar sound, not a rooster's crowing or the distant rumble of a millstone, but something softer and altogether more menacing. The low hum of flies buzzing around your head as you lay in bed. You reach up with a hand to brush them away, feeling the cool morning air on your skin and remembering that it's early summer now, the worst time for anyone living on this sodden patch of land. As you sit up and swing your legs over the side of the pallet, you feel a familiar twinge in your back. It's been like this since winter set in, when the frost had seeped into every joint and muscle like cold water. You rub at it absently with one hand while using the other to get your bearings. It takes a moment or two to recall where exactly you are and what day of the week it is. Your name's not even important right now. Neither is that part about living on this particular patch of land. What matters is getting up, washing down at the nearby well, and eating something before setting off for another long day in the fields. Your stomach growls as you swing your legs over the side of the pallet. It's been a while since breakfast was more than just a memory. You push aside the thin curtain that separates your small space from the one shared with your siblings, careful not to disturb them even though they're probably already awake too, huddled around their own bed in silence. Your sister, Agnes, is usually the first up. She'll have been waiting for you since before dawn so we can get some work done on time. Outside, a faint mist clings to the landscape like an unwelcome guest at your doorstep. It's this sort of day when everything seems veiled and gray. You breathe in deeply through your nose, feeling the damp air catch in your lungs. That smell is familiar too, wet earth mixed with last night's smoke from our fire. Your boots are still by the door where you left them. Someone must have kicked them into place while I was sleeping, dreaming. It feels like it doesn't matter anymore, just getting up, dressing quickly and quietly so as not to disturb anyone else in this tiny household is what counts right now. You fumble for your belt around the back of the bedpost before shrugging on a rough woolen tunic over whatever undergarments you've been using. You're halfway through tying the leather straps at your waist when there's a faint rustling from across the room, followed by an impatient sigh. It takes Agnes less than 2 minutes to get up and help you into your work clothes, a pair of heavy linen breeches that feel like they were made for someone else's body. Outside, it's just starting to lighten enough so that you can see without squinting too much. This is the time when everyone's usually rushing about, some heading out to tend livestock while others make their way towards the fields where we'll spend our day breaking ground and sowing seeds. A slow, laborious process made all the more difficult by this wet spring. As you step into your boots, your foot slides on something slick. One of last night's puddles must have formed in here overnight. You glance up to catch Agnes' exasperated expression as she mutters something about cleaning it properly before we leave for work. After a quick word or two with the rest of the family, you head out into that gray morning air feeling somewhat more alert than when you first woke up, at least until you recall just how much needs doing on this soggy land. The dampness of the morning air clings to your skin like a wet shroud, weighing heavy on your face and shoulders as you make your way towards the village square. The gray mist that veils everything in sight refuses to lift, casting an eerie gloom over the landscape. You can smell the earthy scent of damp soil rising from the ground beneath your feet. As you walk through the quiet streets, the sound of footsteps echoes off the timber-framed buildings, making it seem as though you're walking alongside a dozen other people who are all keeping pace with you. The thatched roofs of the cottages blend together in shades of brown and green, their edges softened by the mist. You arrive at the village square to find a group of villagers gathered near the well, chatting quietly among themselves. They glance up as you approach, exchanging brief smiles before returning to their conversation. You notice one woman holding a wooden bucket, its surface scarred from years of use, and bearing an odd-shaped dent that suggests it may have been involved in some sort of altercation with a stone wall. The sound of the village blacksmith hammering away at a glowing piece of metal carries over from his forge on the outskirts of town. The rhythmic clang-clang-clang provides a steady background noise, punctuated by an occasional shout or muttered curse, as he wrestles with whatever it is that's currently refusing to shape itself into something useful. You nod in greeting at the villagers and continue towards your destination, the manor house where you've been summoned for breakfast. The thought of hot food and perhaps a warm meal on this chilly morning brings out a faint rumble from your stomach, which seems to growl its discontent as you walk. The thatched roof of the manor rises above the surrounding cottages like a green dome, its steep pitch sending rivulets of water running down the slope whenever it rains. The doors are made of heavy oak, studded with iron and adorned with intricate carvings that depict scenes from the hunt, something you've grown tired of looking at over the years. As you approach the entrance, a servant emerges to greet you, his eyes fixed on some point beyond your shoulder as he says, "Good morrow," in a voice devoid of any genuine warmth. You step aside for him to precede you into the great hall, where the air is thick with smoke from last night's fire and reeks faintly of stale ale. The servant leads you towards the high table at the far end of the room, its surface polished to a dull sheen by years of use and scrubbing. A long wooden bench stretches along one side of the table, its worn slats groaning beneath your weight as you sit down. To your left sits the master of the manor house, his face pinched into a frown that's become almost habitual in recent weeks. His wife is seated opposite him, her hands clasped together on her lap, and a faint look of anxiety etched onto her features. The cook, or rather one of the cooks, as there seem to be two now that the other has left for greener pastures, enters with a steaming platter of meat and bread. The aroma wafts up from it like a benediction, making your mouth water in anticipation. You take a piece of bread and break off a corner, watching as the crumbs fall apart at the touch of your fingers. They're coarse, made from whole wheat that's been ground on site using a stone quern, or so you've heard. It's not something you pay much attention to unless someone mentions it in conversation. The master clears his throat and begins speaking, but his voice is low and indistinct at first, making you strain to catch the words. You're still trying to process what he says when a sudden commotion erupts from near the fire. One of the younger children has spilled a cup of milk on the stone flags. The sound of their shrieks carries through the hall like a mixture of fear and excitement as they rush to clean up the spill, sending pails clattering onto the floor. You glance over at your own family group, wondering how they'll react when faced with this chaos. But for now, you're stuck in limbo between watching the commotion unfold and trying to eat breakfast. The air is thickening into a fog of steam from the cooking pots and fire, mingling with the stale scent that clings to every surface like an invisible miasma. You take another bite of bread, feeling the dry texture scrape at your teeth as you chew. It's not the most satisfying experience, but it'll do. Your gaze drifts back towards the high table, where a faint hum of conversation has begun to rise above the clatter and shouting near the fire. The master is speaking again now, his voice rising in pitch as he argues with someone about something that's clearly been bothering him for weeks, probably ever since they discovered that one of their sheep had wandered off into the forest. You're not entirely certain what it is that's so vexing, but you have a feeling it'll be explained to you eventually. For now, your main concern remains getting through this meal without incident and maybe stumbling upon something edible in amongst all the bread and porridge. As the argument continues at the high table, with voices growing louder and the shouting from near the fire showing no signs of abating, you notice a faint scratch on one of the wooden beams overhead. It looks almost like a fingernail, but must be some sort of animal that got into the rafters. You follow its length with your eyes as it disappears around a corner. Your attention snaps back to the scene unfolding below when you hear a sudden crash from near the kitchen entrance. One of the serving girls has dropped an entire tray of food onto the floor, sending meat and bread rolling in all directions like something possessed by demons. The commotion from the dropped tray sends ripples through the room, drawing the attention of those who were momentarily distracted by the noble's conversation. Gasps and murmurs rise up like a collective sigh as the serving girl stands frozen in horror, her eyes fixed on the mess she's made. Your gaze drifts back to the corner where you saw movement earlier, but there's no sign now of any lurking figure. You wonder if your mind was playing tricks on you, maybe you just saw what you wanted to see amidst the chaos and confusion of this grand hall. As the nobles' laughter dies down and they turn their attention to the commotion near the kitchen entrance, Lady Emma rises from her seat and strides purposefully towards the scene. Her voice is sharp as she chides the serving girl for her carelessness, but there's a hint of understanding in her tone that suggests this sort of mishap isn't entirely uncommon. You watch as the nobles begin to stir, some getting up from their seats while others remain seated, sipping their ale or wine. The atmosphere is lively and festive still, despite the minor setback, and you're struck by how quickly they adapt to any disruption in proceedings. A young lordling, not much older than you, catches your eye as he stumbles towards the kitchen entrance, laughing loudly at some private joke with a companion. His eyes are bloodshot, his tunic stained with wine spills from an earlier night, and yet there's something endearingly foolish about him that makes you smile. You consider joining in with them for a moment, but your attention is drawn back to the noble's conversation as it picks up again. They're discussing some weighty issue, possibly the upcoming war campaign or perhaps one of their many disputes over land and power, and you find yourself struggling to keep track of who's saying what. Lady Emma reappears beside you, a hint of amusement on her lips. "You seem lost," she says quietly, nodding towards the nobles. "It can be overwhelming at first." "Forgive me, milady," you reply hastily, trying not to show your confusion. "I'm still adjusting, I suppose, to all this." She nods sympathetically and leans in a little closer. "Don't worry, you'll find your footing soon enough. Just remember, the more one says with their words, the less they often convey. Pay attention to what's left unsaid. It can be just as revealing as what is said aloud." As she speaks, her gaze drifts over towards a nearby servant who's been quietly observing from afar. There's something in his expression that suggests he knows more than he's letting on. You follow Lady Emma's lead and glance at the servant, taking note of the quiet manner with which he stands apart from the rest. It strikes you as unusual. Not everyone here seems quite so reserved. Just then, a commotion erupts near the kitchen entrance once again. This time it's one of the nobles who accidentally knocks over his own cup while reaching for another drink. The resulting spill sends servants scrambling to clean up the mess before anyone slips on the spilled liquid. The room falls silent momentarily as everyone waits with bated breath, their eyes fixed on the would-be clumsy noble. But instead of anger or annoyance, what you see is a mixture of amusement and exasperation. It's almost affectionate. You watch in confusion as one of the senior nobles steps forward to help clean up the spill, chuckling good-naturedly at his companion's misfortune. The atmosphere has shifted once more, this time taking on an almost familial quality. The realization hits you like a cold splash of water. These people might be considered noble and powerful in their own right, but beneath all that pomp and circumstance lies something far deeper. Relationships, alliances, rivalries, and perhaps even genuine friendships forged through shared experiences and common struggles. It's disorienting to see the nobles as individuals rather than caricatures or abstractions. You've been so focused on observing them from a distance, trying to grasp their abstract concepts of hierarchy and power that it never occurred to you they'd be people too. As this new understanding slowly sinks in, your gaze drifts around the room once more. You notice details now, how one servant discreetly adjusts his master's cloak while pretending not to have seen him, how a young couple steals glances at each other across the hall, exchanging flirtatious whispers, and how even Lady Emma seems to be laughing with someone, though her expression remains stern enough that it could also be interpreted as disapproving. It dawns on you now, this isn't just about studying a social hierarchy or observing a bygone era. You're being immersed in the raw, unvarnished reality of life within these castle walls, messy, complicated, and alive with its own rhythms and patterns. The scent of old parchment and stale air clings to your skin like a damp shroud. You're standing in the dimly lit scriptorium, surrounded by rows of wooden desks and worn leather chairs, each one bearing the weight of countless hours spent hunched over manuscripts. The flickering candles cast eerie shadows on the walls as you breathe in deeply, trying to capture the essence of this forgotten place. You notice a faint hum emanating from the nearby scribe's bench, where Brother Edwin is painstakingly copying an illuminated page. His quill scratches across the vellum with a soft scratching sound that seems almost soothing after the initial jolt of being here. As you watch, he pauses to dip his quill in the inkwell and raises it above his head for a moment before resuming work. The air is thick with the scent of parchment and something else, an earthy undertone that hints at damp stone or perhaps even mold. You can't quite place it, but your nose wrinkles involuntarily as you breathe deeper. The temperature in here feels heavy, almost oppressive, like a physical weight pressing down on your shoulders. Brother Edwin's hands move with the precision of habit as he works, the muscles in his arms and back flexing beneath his simple tunic. You can't help but feel a twinge of envy at the practiced ease with which he handles the quill. It's clear that this is what he was born to do. As you stand there watching him work, your eyes begin to wander around the room. The scriptorium seems old even by medieval standards, its wooden beams weathered and worn from countless years of candle smoke and dust. But despite its age, or perhaps because of it, there's a sense of calm that pervades this space, as if the weight of history has somehow seeped into every inch of these stone walls. You notice that Brother Edwin has paused again to adjust his chair. The soft creaking sound is almost like a sigh from an old wooden creature settling into its accustomed spot. He leans back, letting out a faint grunt as he stretches his neck and shoulders before resuming work with renewed vigor. It's clear that this scribe has spent many long hours within these walls, perhaps even decades. His hands seem to move on autopilot now, the strokes of his quill growing more confident and precise as time passes. You can't help but wonder what drives someone like Brother Edwin to spend so much of their life cooped up in a place like this. The scriptorium's silence is almost palpable, broken only by the soft scratching sound from Brother Edwin's bench, the creaks and groans of old woodwork, and the distant murmur of voices from beyond the stone walls. You strain your ears to pick out more details, but can't quite make out what's being said. You become aware that you're standing in a small alcove near the back wall, partially hidden by rows of dusty bookshelves. The faint scent of old paper lingers on your skin now, mingling with the air from Brother Edwin's bench to create an unmistakable atmosphere, one that speaks more clearly than words ever could about the drudgery and dedication required for a life spent within these castle walls. Your gaze drifts back to Brother Edwin as he works, lost in his own world of script and ink. His hands seem to have developed their own rhythm now, like clockwork they move from vellum to quill, creating lines that blend seamlessly into the surrounding text. You find yourself becoming mesmerized by this repetition, your eyes tracing the same gentle curves as he works. As you stand there entranced, a faint noise drifts through the scriptorium's silence once more. This time it's the creak of old leather as Brother Edwin leans back in his chair, letting out another soft sigh. His hands pause for just an instant before resuming their intricate dance with quill and parchment. Your attention lingers on the scribe for a moment longer, until your gaze begins to wander once more around the scriptorium. The candlelight seems to be casting shadows that twist and writhe across the walls now. Like living things, they seem to pulse and throb in time with Brother Edwin's steady heartbeat as he works. The weight of history still lingers here, palpable in every creaking beam and dusty bookshelf. You can almost feel it seeping into your skin through the pores on the back of your neck, leaving a faint, tingling sensation that refuses to fade. As you stand lost within this sea of parchment and candlelight, Brother Edwin finally sets down his quill after completing what appears to be an intricate illustration, perhaps even a whole page in one go. He leans forward once more to examine it closely before letting out another contented sigh as he settles back into his chair. The silence that follows is almost deafening now, like the stillness at the eye of a hurricane, where every other sound fades away and all you're left with are your own ragged breaths. You feel yourself becoming part of this stillness, lost in the intricate dance between Brother Edwin's hands and the parchment beneath them. As the moments tick by, the candlelight seems to grow softer, casting shadows that blend together like wisps of cloud across the walls. The air within the scriptorium grows even heavier now, weighted with an almost unbearable sense of calm that defies explanation. You're standing in this stillness when it hits you, a stark realization about why someone as dedicated and skilled as Brother Edwin has spent their entire life cooped up within these castle walls. Perhaps he hasn't chosen to be here so much as his very existence has become intertwined with the work itself, woven into every line of parchment like the intricate patterns on an illuminated page. As you stand transfixed by this epiphany, the silence that's enveloped the scriptorium stretches out even further, until it seems almost palpable enough to touch. The candlelight flickers once more before stabilizing into a gentle golden glow that casts long shadows across Brother Edwin's work as he sits lost in contemplation. Time itself appears to slow within this stillness now, like hours ticked away on an old clock hidden somewhere deep within the castle walls. Your very presence seems suspended between past and present, unable to move forward or backward, but trapped here amidst the dusty pages and flickering candlelight. You can almost hear Brother Edwin's thoughts reverberating through the silence, perhaps even feeling a faint echo of his own heartbeat growing slower as he sits lost in thought. The weight of years spent within these walls seems almost palpable now, bearing down upon you like an unseen force that refuses to be shaken off. It's clear that this isn't just any ordinary scribe or scriptorium, but rather a place where time itself has become twisted and distorted, woven into the very fabric of every parchment page. Your presence within these walls seems almost incidental now, lost amidst the weight of history as it presses down upon you from all sides. As you stand entranced by this stillness, Brother Edwin stirs once more, his hands moving with renewed purpose to correct a minor error on one edge of the illustration. The silence that's held for so long is broken only briefly before settling back into an even deeper quietude now. You can almost hear your own heartbeat reverberating through the stillness alongside Brother Edwin's, growing slower in tandem as you both sit lost within this sea of parchment and candlelight. Time itself seems to be slowing. Perhaps it's even come to a complete stop for all you know, trapped here amidst rows upon rows of dusty bookshelves. As the moments tick by, your own breathing grows shallower now, almost synchronized with Brother Edwin's as he pauses once more in contemplation. The silence that holds within this scriptorium seems so deep it threatens to swallow everything whole, including yourselves. And yet, even amidst all this stillness, you can't help but feel a growing sense of unease creeping over you like frost on winter nights. You begin to realize just how little time Brother Edwin has left for anything other than his work, perhaps not enough even to enjoy the simple pleasures that life outside these castle walls might offer. As the weight of reality presses down upon you, your gaze drifts back to the scribe's hands as they pause once more over their latest creation. The candles seem to be burning lower now, casting long shadows across Brother Edwin's face, but it's not his expression that draws your attention this time so much as the small notebook lying open on his lap. The pages within are blank except for a single line of script at the very bottom, perhaps even just a few words scribbled by an overzealous novice. The ink is still wet from being used, but there's something poignant about seeing it here amidst all these dusty pages and flickering candlelight that tugs at your heartstrings. You begin to wonder if Brother Edwin ever gets to read anything outside of his work, or whether the scriptorium has become so ingrained in him he no longer even thinks about what lies beyond its stone walls. The thought sends a shiver down your spine as you realize just how little chance there is for anyone trapped within these castle walls, let alone someone like Brother Edwin who spent their entire life lost amidst parchment and candlelight. As the silence stretches out once more, it seems to grow even heavier now, bearing down upon you with an almost unbearable weight. Your presence here within this scriptorium feels both insignificant and vital at the same time, as if every breath you take could either change or confirm Brother Edwin's place in history forever. You can almost hear your own heartbeat growing slower alongside his, trapped together amidst rows of dusty bookshelves and flickering candlelight that seems to stretch out into infinity. Time itself appears frozen now, refusing to budge even a single second as the weight of reality presses down upon you both like an unseen force. And yet it's within this very stillness that something unexpected happens, perhaps not so much in terms of action or change, but rather how your perception shifts ever so slightly amidst all these dusty pages and candlelight. You begin to see Brother Edwin for what he is, a human being trapped within the walls of his work, unable to escape even if they wanted to. As you stand there lost within this sea of parchment and light, it's clear that time itself has become both our greatest ally and enemy, a cruel force that taunts us with every passing moment by reminding us just how little we have. The scent of damp earth and mildew wafts through the air, clinging to your skin like a damp shroud as you breathe in the musty smell of aged books and parchment. You're standing within the walls of an ancient library, surrounded by shelves that stretch towards the vaulted ceiling like sentinels guarding secrets. The flickering candles cast eerie shadows on the stone floor, making it seem as though the very air itself is alive with whispers from long-forgotten scholars. Your fingers brush against a stack of dusty tomes, releasing tiny particles into the air that dance in the candlelight like restless spirits. Your gaze falls upon a particular shelf, where a cluster of worn leather-bound volumes seems to be calling your attention. You reach out, running your thumb over the embossed covers, feeling the raised letters and intricate patterns as you try to decipher their meaning. The softness of the leather yields beneath your touch, releasing a faint whisper of old ink and forgotten knowledge. As you stand there lost within this sea of parchment and light, it's clear that time itself has become both our greatest ally and enemy, a cruel force that taunts us with every passing moment by reminding us just how little we have. The weight of centuries presses down upon your shoulders, making the air feel thick and heavy. Your eyes wander to the opposite wall, where a fresco depicts scenes from medieval life. Peasants tilling the land, nobles hunting in the forest, and monks copying illuminated manuscripts with precision and devotion. You notice that the monks' robes seem strangely worn, as though they'd been hastily repaired rather than painstakingly crafted. You turn your attention back to the shelf, where a small inscription catches your eye. Anonymous scribe. It seems an odd thing for someone to sign their work without claiming credit or pride. Perhaps it was a humble monk who penned these words with no expectation of praise or recognition. Or maybe it's simply a nod to the fleeting nature of human achievement, acknowledging that even the greatest works will eventually be forgotten. The flickering candles cast eerie shadows on your face as you ponder this riddle. Your skin feels clammy from the cold stone floor beneath you, and your fingers begin to tingle with the chill. You wrap them around a nearby candlestick for warmth, feeling the smooth metal grow cooler in response to your own chilled body. As the minutes tick by, the shadows on the walls seem to deepen and twist into strange configurations. It's as though time itself is warping and bending within these ancient stones, forcing you to consider what it means to leave a lasting legacy when everything we create will eventually fade away like dust in the wind. Your gaze drifts back to the fresco, where the peasants are now shown tending to their land under the gentle light of dawn. Their faces seem relaxed in content, but you wonder if they truly know the struggles that lie ahead for them, or whether they're simply trying to find meaning within a world governed by chance and circumstance. You feel your eyelids begin to droop as the weight of centuries presses down upon your shoulders once more. The air seems to thicken with an almost palpable fatigue, making every breath a laborious effort. Your fingers relax around the candlestick, releasing it back onto its holder as you let yourself drift into the haze of exhaustion. Your mind wanders through the ages, chasing whispers and echoes that come from distant corners of this vast library. You seem to be hearing snippets of forgotten conversations, debates about theology and philosophy, discussions on astronomy and medicine, but they're mere murmurs in a language you can no longer understand. The candles flicker lower as your body succumbs to the crushing weight of time itself. Shadows dance across your face like restless spirits trying to claim their place within this vast tapestry. Your breathing slows, becoming almost imperceptible amidst the quiet murmur of parchment and light. Your fingers feel heavy on the stone floor beneath you, and for a moment, perhaps just a fleeting instant before oblivion claims its prize, it seems as though time itself is finally yielding to your own gentle weariness. As you succumb to the allure of slumber, your eyelids drooping like weary leaves on a winter's branch, you're suddenly jolted back into awareness by a faint rustling sound. It's almost imperceptible, but it pierces through the haze of exhaustion like a cold knife cutting through silk. You try to focus on the source of the noise, but your gaze refuses to cooperate. Your eyes feel heavy, weighed down by an unseen force that presses against them from within. You struggle to raise them, but they seem stuck in place, reluctant to leave their comfortable repose. The rustling grows louder, a soft whispering that's beginning to take on a rhythmic quality. It sounds like the pages of a book being turned, or perhaps the gentle lapping of waves against a shore. Whatever it is, it's accompanied by an unsettling sense of movement, as if something or someone is slowly making its way towards you. Your fingers still feel heavy on the stone floor, but now they're tingling with a faint, unpleasant sensation. It's like pins and needles, but more akin to being pricked by tiny barbs that refuse to be ignored. You try to lift them, but they seem stuck fast, as if rooted in place. As you lay there trying to make sense of the strange sensations coursing through your body, a faint scent wafts into your nostrils. It's acrid and unpleasant, like something has died nearby, or perhaps it's just the aftermath of last night's dinner. The smell is familiar yet alien, a jarring combination that refuses to be placated. Your mind struggles to connect the dots between these disparate sensations. The rustling sound, the heavy fingers, the tingling sensation in your hands and feet, the acrid scent wafting through the air. It's as if you're being pulled apart by unseen forces, each component of your experience threatening to shatter into a million pieces. And then, like a key turning in a rusty lock, everything clicks into place. You remember where you are, or at least, what time period you find yourself in. Medieval England, with all its attendant horrors and hardships, stretches out before you like an unforgiving desert landscape. You think of the Black Death, that great scourge that swept through Europe's towns and cities, leaving death and despair in its wake. You recall the countless bodies stacked like cordwood on every street corner, the once familiar streets now transformed into charnel houses where the living dared not tread. As you delve deeper into these dark memories, a figure begins to take shape at the edge of your vision. It's shrouded in shadow, its features indistinct, but there's something about it that sends a shiver down your spine. It moves closer, its presence accompanied by an unholy stench that clings to you like a bad omen. You feel a cold dread creeping up the back of your neck as it looms over you, its face twisted into a grotesque grimace. "Ah," it says in a voice like dripping honey and rusty hinges, "you should have stayed hidden. Now you'll never leave this place alive." The words hang in the air like a challenge or perhaps an accusation. Whatever their intent, they seem to carry a weight of inevitability that's impossible to shake off. You feel trapped, cornered by forces beyond your control, and yet, as you look up at the figure looming over you, you realize with a jolt of terror that it's not just some medieval specter. It's something far more sinister, something that wears on its sleeve the very embodiment of death itself. As you gaze up at the figure, its features begin to take shape, etched into your mind like a ghastly fresco on the walls of a church. The air seems to grow thick with an unholy presence, heavy with the stench of rot and decay. You try to scream, but your voice is trapped in your throat, frozen by some unseen force that holds you prisoner. The figure looms closer, its very essence seeming to seep into your skin like a cold draft on a winter's night. Its face is deathly pale, with sunken eyes that burn with an otherworldly green fire. A twisted grimace spreads across its features, as if it has just savored some bitter secret known only to itself. Its sleeve, the one that wears death like a badge of honor, appears almost tattered. Yes, tattered is the word. The fabric seems to be unraveling at an alarming rate, threads snapping and flapping in the breeze like so many skeletal fingers. You feel an inexplicable shiver run down your spine as you realize that this sleeve might not just be a metaphor for death's presence. It could very well be a manifestation of its power. The figure raises a hand, palm upturned, and points to some point beyond your own gaze. Look, it seems to say, though the voice is barely audible over the creaking of wooden beams in your mind. You follow the gesture with a sinking feeling in your stomach, wondering what new horrors lie waiting for you. That's when you see them, hordes of twisted creatures shuffling through the streets like so many living skeletons. Their faces are blackened and pockmarked, as if they've been scorched by some terrible fire that still rages within their very souls. The stench of death hangs heavy over them, a noxious cloud that clings to your skin like a bad omen. Those who came before, the figure intones in a voice that sends shivers down your spine. Carriers of pestilence and despair. You feel your mind reeling as you try to comprehend the scale of this catastrophe. The Black Death, or as they called it here, simply the pestilence, had swept through Europe like a vengeful spirit, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. As the figure's words sink into your understanding, you realize that these creatures are not just victims, they're carriers of some unholy disease. It spreads from person to person, feeding on their very essence until there's nothing left but an empty husk of a human being. The stench grows overpowering as more and more creatures shamble through the streets, driven by a morbid curiosity towards this. You. You feel like you're trapped in some nightmarish realm where death itself has come to claim its own. Your skin crawls with every step they take closer, your breath catches in your throat. And then, just as it seems like all is lost, the figure raises a hand once more, and this time points not towards the hordes of creatures, but towards you. You, it says, voice dripping with malevolence. A stranger among us. The creatures pause at the periphery of your vision, their faces twisted in curiosity as they regard you with cold calculation. You realize that to them you're a walking enigma, an oddity who has stumbled into this forsaken place without even realizing it. Your skin crawls as one of the creatures takes its first step closer. Closer still. The air thickens around you like honey, heavy and impenetrable. Your mind screams for escape but finds none. Your body freezes in terror. You have no idea what's coming, the figure intones once more, voice dripping with foreboding. No concept of the darkness that lies ahead. You try to speak, to beg, plead, or scream, but it's too late. Your vision blurs as a twisted mass closes in around you. The dampness seeps into your skin as you stand still for a moment, letting the cool morning air cling to your cloak like a wet shroud. The mist that clings to everything in this gray dawn is starting to lift, revealing the rough stone facade of the local alehouse. You've stood outside it countless times before, but somehow today feels different, Perhaps it's the weight of exhaustion still clinging to you from yesterday's long walk. As you breathe in, the smell of damp earth and smoke wafts up, carrying with it the faint tang of roasting vegetables. Your stomach growls at the promise of breakfast inside, where a fire crackles on the hearth and the aroma of baking bread mingles with the murkiness outside. The sound of clanging pots and low murmurs drifts out into the misty morning air, drawing you in like a siren's call. You push open the creaking door, letting it swing shut behind you as you step into the warm, dim light within. The fire crackles on, casting flickering shadows across the walls as you make your way to the bar. A few patrons are scattered about, their faces lit up by the flames. A pair of traveling merchants huddled over a mug of ale, an elderly woman sipping a thin broth from a wooden bowl, and a solitary figure in a long coat slumped against the wall, nose buried in a dog-eared book. You take your place at the end of the bar beside them, running a calloused hand through your hair as you nod to the serving girl. Ale, you say simply, not bothering with small talk. It's been a while since last night's event still lingered in your mind like an itch that refused to be scratched. The alewife fills your mug from a clay jug and sets it down on a wooden board, giving you a sympathetic glance as she works. You catch the hint of curiosity behind her eyes but say nothing. There are some secrets even strangers can sense after all. Instead, you take a sip of the bitter liquid, letting its warmth spread through your chest like a gentle fire. The solitary figure in the long coat stirs from their book, pushing themselves upright with an effort that makes them wince. You notice they're limping now, must have been injured at some point since last night's mess. They make their way over to you, eyes narrowing slightly as they take in your own disheveled appearance. Long day ahead of us, the figure says quietly, setting down a worn leather satchel beside them on the bench. I'm Eadwold, just passing through. You're local. You nod, taking another sip from your mug to clear the dust out of your throat as you run an eye over their battered gear. That's when it hits you. They have no visible markings or insignia, no badge on their cloak, and yet there's something about them that doesn't quite add up. Traveling in a hurry, I reckon, Eadwold says with a wry grin as he takes his place beside you. You catch the faintest glint of mischief in their eye. They're either running from someone or heading for trouble. It's hard to tell which. The serving girl interrupts your thoughts by placing a steaming bowl on the board before you, the aroma wafting up like a gentle breeze. Here we are, she says with a friendly smile. Hot porridge and fresh bread straight from my own oven. You take a grateful bite of the warm bread, feeling it crumble between your teeth as the flavors unfold on your tongue. It's not fancy fare by any means, but there's something comforting about sitting here amidst these rough-hewn people that makes you feel almost at home. Eadwold pushes their own bowl closer, dipping a piece of stale bread into the porridge with an air of practiced nonchalance. You catch yourself watching them with growing curiosity. What is it they're trying to hide beneath all this rough-and-tumble posturing? The limping aside, there's something almost refined about Eadwold that doesn't quite fit in among these local folk. You continue eating your breakfast in silence for a while longer, lost in thought as the alehouse slowly fills with more patrons, and the air thickens with conversation. Outside, morning light begins to creep into the cloudy sky. If you squint hard enough, you can almost see the outlines of distant fields beyond the village outskirts. Eventually, Eadwold clears their throat, leaning back against the wall as they regard you with a hint of curiosity now bordering on genuine interest. "You're not from around here," they say quietly after another sip from your mug. It's more statement than question. For once, you don't mind getting caught off guard. In fact, it feels like a strange kind of relief to finally be talking about something other than last night's chaos with someone who doesn't seem too concerned with what anyone else thinks. "I'm just passing through," you admit after a moment's hesitation, "and besides, there are some stories that don't need sharing." Eadwold nods knowingly as they take another bite of their porridge. You catch the faintest glint in their eye again, this time tinged with something almost like recognition. But when you try to put your finger on it, it dissolves into nothing more than a fleeting sense that there's someone else out there who might understand what it means to be lost and aimless. The fire crackles on as the morning wears on, casting shadows across faces both familiar and unknown. You continue eating, sipping ale, and listening, sometimes even smiling when someone tells a particularly good joke or shares an amusing anecdote from their travels. Oh, and yet, there's something that won't quite settle into place amidst all these warm conversations and shared laughter. The faintest memory of Eadwold, seen out of the corner of your eye earlier in the morning as you first took your seat at the bar, a fleeting glimpse of someone who didn't seem to fit anywhere among the patrons. It lingers like a half-forgotten dream when you finally get up from the bench after finishing your ale and bid Eadwold farewell, clapping them on the back in parting. "May fortune smile upon our paths," they say as you make for the door, and though their words are nothing more than empty phraseology, there's something peculiar about their tone that makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe. As you step out into the cool evening air, the weight of Eadwold's gaze lingers on your shoulders like an unshouldered cloak. You can't shake the feeling that their parting words were more than a mere courtesy. There was something almost urgent in the way they spoke them. You quicken your pace as you make for the town square, weaving through the clusters of villagers gathered around the fire pits. The smell of roasting meat and freshly baked bread wafts up from the nearby stalls, mingling with the murmur of hushed conversations and clinking ale mugs. You nod in greeting to a few familiar faces, the blacksmith's apprentice, Godric, a half-dozen burly men-at-arms who have spent their day drilling on the outskirts of town, but your mind remains preoccupied. What was it about Eadwold's tone that sent shivers down your spine? You replay the encounter in your head, the way they clasped your arm, the inflection in their voice when they said, "May fortune smile upon our paths." Was it something in the words themselves, or simply a product of fatigue and too many ale-soaked nights spent listening to travelers' tales? You duck into a nearby tavern, a cramped, smoke-filled dive that reeks of stale beer and desperation. The air inside is thick with tension. You can practically see the weight of unspoken secrets hovering above each patron's head like a physical presence. Your eyes scan the dimly lit room for any sign of Eadwold or their companions, but they seem to have vanished into thin air. You slide onto an empty stool at the bar and signal the harried-looking server, a wizened crone who seems older than the hills themselves. "Another round of ale," you tell her, digging into your pouch for the requisite coins. "And some information." The woman eyes you warily as she pours your drink, but nods curtly when you ask if anyone's been talking about anything interesting lately. You listen intently as she leans in close, spilling a few choice words like secrets overheard at her sister-in-law's funeral. Word is that the Lord of Wulfric Hall has gone missing, she hisses, glancing around the room with an air of conspiratorial dread. Some say he was taken by the king's men for questioning. Others claim he fled into hiding to avoid some dark business with one of the local guilds. The implications sink in slowly. Wulfric Hall is a nearby manor that controls significant tracts of land and resources within the Shire. If its lord has indeed gone missing, it could spell trouble on a grand scale. You toss back your ale, feeling a growing sense of unease as you realize that your chance encounter with Eadwold may be more than just coincidence. There's something brewing in these parts, something big enough to draw the attention and ire of the king himself. As the server hurries off to serve another patron, her words hang in the air like a challenge. What do you know about Wulfric Hall? And what exactly is Eadwold involved with? A gust of cold wind whips through the tavern as if answering your questions, and suddenly the doors burst open with an authoritative clang. A burly figure clad in worn leather armor strides inside, his eyes scanning the room like a hunting dog on the scent. Godric, he booms, clapping the blacksmith's apprentice on the back. We've got word from Wulfric Hall, their lord is indeed missing. The king's men are searching high and low for him. But rumor has it that someone within these very walls may hold the key to his disappearance. The tavern falls silent as all eyes turn toward you, Godric included. For a moment, you're trapped in a spotlight of suspicion, your mind racing with questions about Eadwold's words and this mysterious business surrounding Wulfric Hall. Then, like a wave breaking over a sunken ship, the silence is shattered by the sound of clinking mugs and raucous laughter. It seems that everyone has an opinion on the matter, except for you, it appears. The faint scent of damp earth and mold wafts through the air, carrying with it the promise of a quiet evening to come. The chill of the day still lingers on your skin as you make your way back to the small cottage, the darkness of the forest giving way to the soft glow of candles within. You push open the creaky door and step inside, letting out a deep breath as the warmth envelops you like a gentle hug. The fire crackles in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls as the flames dance and settle into a steady rhythm. You can feel the weight of your day lifting with each step closer to the bed, the exhaustion seeping from your bones like water through parched earth. As you shed your cloak and boots by the fire, the silence is almost palpable, a heavy blanket that wraps around you, soothing away the rough edges of the world outside. The only sound is the soft crackle of the flames and the occasional creak of the old wooden beams as they settle into their evening repose. You're not alone in this quiet sanctuary. Your family has already settled in for the night, the children's soft snores mingling with the gentle hum of your wife's voice as she reads from a worn leather book. The words are indistinguishable, but her tone is soothing, like a lullaby sung to the rhythm of the fire. You take off your tunic and hose, dropping them onto the wooden chest beside the bed. The chill air carries with it the scent of damp earth, still lingering on your skin from the earlier walk through the forest. You can feel the moisture seeping into your bones as you change into a warm set of linen undergarments, soft against your skin like a gentle caress. As you climb onto the bed, the mattress creaks in protest beneath your weight. It's an old wooden frame, its springs groaning with age and use, but it provides a comforting familiarity that wraps around you like a well-worn blanket. Your wife shifts to make room beside her, and you settle into the warm space between them, feeling the soft give of the mattress as they draw up close. The warmth from the fire seeps into your body, chasing away the lingering chill of the day. You can feel it spreading through your limbs like a gentle trickle of honey, soothing away the aches and pains that come with walking for hours in the damp forest. Your wife's hand finds yours beneath the covers, fingers intertwining in a soft grasp. The silence deepens as you settle into this quiet space, a heavy stillness that presses against your eardrums like water on the shore. It's almost possible to hear the beat of your own heart, steady and strong amidst the calm. The children stir fitfully, their snores growing softer, but they're not quite awake yet. As you let out a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders, you become aware of the faint scent wafting through the cottage, the smell that would drive modern farmers crazy: manure. Your family's small plot of land is struggling to produce enough for their needs this year, and they've had to supplement with a few chickens and some rabbits. The result is a pungent mix of droppings and damp earth that clings to everything like an unwelcome shadow. It's not the most pleasant smell in the world, but it's one you're accustomed to. You can't help but notice, though, as your mind wanders through the day's events, the muddy path back from market, the chickens pecking at grain on the uneven soil of their small enclosure. It all comes together with a pungent unity that clings to everything like a damp shroud. Your wife stirs beside you, her eyes fluttering open in response to some distant sound. She focuses on your face for a moment before nodding softly and settling back into sleep, the motion almost imperceptible as she slips beneath the covers once more. The stillness deepens further, punctuated only by the occasional creak of the wooden frame or the soft hum of the fire. It's like being enveloped in a warm, dark blanket that wraps around you, soothing away all cares and worries, leaving nothing but the gentle beat of your own heart to guide you through the night. As the minutes tick by, the sounds grow softer still. The creaks fade into an occasional groan from the wooden beams. The hum of the fire becomes a mere whisper on the edge of perception. It's as if time itself has slowed down, like water flowing over smooth rocks in a quiet stream. You can feel your eyelids growing heavy, weighed down by the stillness and the warmth that envelops you. Your breath slows, becoming almost imperceptible as you let yourself sink deeper into this soft, safe space. As you sink deeper into this tranquil state, your mind begins to wander, carried away by the gentle current of thought that ebbs and flows through the quiet recesses of your brain. You find yourself standing in a lush meadow, surrounded by wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. The scent of blooming heather wafts up, entwining itself with the earthy richness of damp soil. But as you breathe it in, something peculiar registers at the edge of your perception, a pungent aroma that's almost overwhelming in its intensity. It's like nothing you've ever smelled before, a heady mix of animal dung and moldy hay, overlaid by the acrid tang of burning peat. You wrinkle your nose in distaste as it assaults your senses. You try to turn away from the smell, but it seems to be seeping into every pore of your being, like an unwelcome presence that refuses to be ignored. It's a reminder, suddenly and jarringly, that you're not standing in some idyllic meadow, but rather in the midst of medieval England, where waste management is a distant concept and sanitation barely exists. You imagine yourself walking alongside the village blacksmith, his sweat-drenched apron stained with the grime of hard labor. He gestures towards the nearby latrine pit, its wooden cover creaking ominously as it strains to contain the noxious fumes within. The air reeks of human waste and animal dung, a stench that hangs heavy over the village like an oppressive fog. As you follow him through the narrow streets, you notice how few windows are open despite the warm summer breeze. The villagers seem reluctant to invite in the outside world with its myriad smells. The tang of wood smoke from cooking fires, the earthy richness of manure-strewn fields, and the acrid bite of burning peat from the kilns. Your guide leads you past the village well, where a group of women are drawing water for the day's household chores. The wooden bucket is worn smooth by countless uses, its rope frayed and creaking with each new dip into the cool depths below. As they pour the clear liquid over their hands, you catch sight of the faint outline of hand-washing stations, small basins or stone troughs filled with water and a few meager strips of wood for scrubbing. The reality hits home. Without running water, soap, or even basic sanitation facilities, medieval life is a constant battle against filth and disease. In this world where waste management is non-existent and sewage flows freely through the streets, you wouldn't last a week, not without succumbing to some debilitating illness that would leave you bedridden for weeks on end. As your guide leads you deeper into the village, you notice how few trees line the narrow lanes. There leaves a welcome respite from the dust and grime that seems to cling to every surface. The air is heavy with smoke from cooking fires and kilns, an ever-present reminder of the limited resources at hand: wood for fuel, water for drinking, and manure for fertilizer. In this unforgiving environment, where human waste and animal dung mingle freely in the streets, you begin to appreciate just how alien a concept modern sanitation is. Without it, life becomes a relentless struggle against disease and infection, as each passing day brings new risks of illness from tainted water sources or contaminated food supplies. Your thoughts turn to the medieval farmers who till these same fields, men like John of Haughton, a 14th century English monk tasked with managing his monastery's lands. They would have been horrified by your modern understanding of waste management and sanitation, their practices laughable in comparison. The village blacksmith leads you past a small group of monks at work on the land, tilling the rich soil with wooden plows that leave behind trails of dung and urine. As they break for lunch, their meal consists mainly of boiled vegetables and stale bread, washed down by water from the nearby well, which is doubtless contaminated with all manner of bacteria. Their table conversation revolves around matters of local politics, crop yields, and the struggle to maintain church lands in a world beset on all sides by disease, war, and famine. You listen intently as they debate the merits of different farming practices, each vying for recognition from their abbot or prior as the most innovative solution. But amidst this lively discussion, you can't help but notice one topic is curiously absent: sanitation. It's a subject barely whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors, if at all. They have more pressing concerns than ensuring that waste doesn't contaminate their water sources, and so they muddle through with makeshift solutions born of desperation rather than design. As your guide continues to lead you deeper into the village, you begin to grasp just how starkly different life was in medieval England from what we experience today. In a world without modern sanitation or waste management systems, disease spreads rapidly, crops fail due to contamination and poor soil quality, and daily life is reduced to an endless struggle against filth and grime. You start to wonder whether you could survive for even 1 week in such conditions, if your immune system would hold strong against the constant onslaught of bacteria and other pathogens. The answer seems increasingly unlikely, as each passing moment reveals more about just how alien a concept modern sanitation is. The blacksmith's face breaks into a wry smile as he catches sight of you lost in thought. You see, he says with a knowing glint in his eye, in our world waste management isn't so much an art, but rather a grim necessity that consumes every waking moment. The scent of damp earth and smoke wafts through the air, carrying with it the weight of another day's toil. You're standing on creaking wooden boards, your feet sinking slightly into the earthen floor of a small village home. The thatched roof above seems to sag under its own weight, casting long shadows across the room. You've been helping out in the local mill for weeks now, and the smell of damp earth has become all too familiar. It clings to your skin like a bad habit, refusing to be washed away no matter how many times you scrub with soap and water. The villagers have grown accustomed to it, but strangers often wrinkle their noses in distaste. The sound of hammering echoes through the village, punctuated by the occasional shout or laughter from the nearby market square. You glance out the window, watching as a group of burly men haggle over the price of a shipment of fresh grain. The sun beats down on them, casting a golden glow across the scene. Your stomach growls with hunger, reminding you that it's almost time for dinner. You've been working in the mill since dawn, and your belly is protesting its lack of sustenance. Your fingers are sore from handling the heavy stones, and your back aches from bending over the grinding wheel all morning. Inside, the fire crackles and spits, casting flickering shadows across the walls as it heats up for dinner. The aroma of cooking meat wafts through the air, mingling with the damp earth smell to create an almost overwhelming sensory experience. Your mouth waters in anticipation, but your stomach protests at being left unsatisfied. You glance over at Old Man Thorn, who's sitting by the fire, his eyes closed as he savors the warmth on his face. He looks like a man contented with life, despite the hardships that come with living in this medieval world. You can't help but feel a twinge of envy. Maybe it's because you've been working so hard lately. As you sit down to eat, your eyes land on a small wooden box perched beside Old Man Thorn. It's an old thing, weathered to a soft gray from years of use and neglect. You remember seeing it before in the village elder's hands, perhaps. Or was it one of the traveling peddlers who came through last autumn? The memory is hazy, but you recall that box containing something precious, seeds for next year's planting, or maybe even a small cache of gold coins set aside against hard times. Whatever its contents, Old Man Thorn seems to treasure it dearly. Your dinner consists of thick slabs of salted pork and boiled root vegetables. The meat is tough but flavorful, the kind that takes hours to cook down into something edible. You eat slowly, savoring each bite as you try to ignore your growing hunger pangs. Conversation around the table revolves around taxes, specifically, whose turn it is to pay them this week. There's a bit of grumbling and complaining, but Old Man Thorn just chuckles good-naturedly and says something about the wheel turning in favor of someone else for once. The rest seem to accept his words with a shrug. You watch as the evening wears on, listening to snippets of conversation that drift across the room. They're discussing which field is most fertile this year, or whether to take their livestock to market early next week. It's the kind of mundane talk you find yourself lost in when life becomes routine, and it seems like every day blends together with the same tasks repeated over and over. As darkness begins to fall outside, the room grows quiet once more. The fire crackles softly now, its flames reduced to a gentle simmer as everyone settles into their evening routines. You can feel your eyelids growing heavy, weighed down by fatigue after another long day of work in the mill. In this peaceful atmosphere, it's hard to recall that taxes are due soon, and that you're part of a community expected to contribute its fair share. The village elder stands up from his seat beside Old Man Thorn, his expression serious for once as he clears his throat to speak. Friends, he says softly, this week marks the next collection of our annual tithe. I know it's not always easy or welcome, but we must remember that this is what keeps us safe in these uncertain times. The room falls silent, with everyone looking down at their hands or fidgeting with something nearby. There's a certain amount expected from every household, measured out according to the size and productivity of your land. It can be as much as half your annual harvest for those with larger plots, and while it might seem like an unfair burden on some families, others see it as necessary protection against hardship or disaster. You glance around at the faces in the room, feeling a twinge of unease creeping up from within. This is what being part of this community means, sharing responsibilities and resources to ensure everyone has enough food on their table, but also facing financial burdens that can be difficult to bear when times are tough. As the evening wears on, you notice how some people glance at each other with a mixture of resentment and understanding. They're aware that they won't be able to pay as much this year due to poor harvests or struggling livestock, but know their neighbors will help in times like these just as surely as others rely on them. You sit there a while longer, listening to the muted conversations around you. People discuss everything from whose turn it is for extra tax duty to whether they should take part of last week's leftover bread to sell at market tomorrow. As the talk ebbs and flows, a sense of normalcy settles over you once more, but beneath this calm surface lies tension. The air outside cools slightly now that night has fallen, carrying with it scents from nearby homes, cooking smoke, damp earth, and perhaps even some hint of perfume on one or two of the village women. As people drift away to their respective beds after dinner, you're left alone by the dying firelight, feeling heavy-lidded but still awake. You can sense the strain of working hard all week weighing down everyone's shoulders. Taxes loom like an overhanging shadow, casting doubt on whether your efforts will be enough come harvest time. Yet for now, there's a quiet stillness in this room that seems almost otherworldly. The fire crackled and spat in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls as the group sat in contemplative silence. The air was heavy with unspoken thoughts, each person lost in their own worries about the upcoming tax collection. Thomas, a grizzled old man with a thick beard, let out a low sigh and rubbed his temples. His wife, Margaret, placed a reassuring hand on his knee, but even she looked troubled. As the minutes ticked by, the stillness began to feel oppressive. Someone broke the silence, but it wasn't who you might expect, not one of the burly men or gruff women who had been discussing their crops and livestock just hours before. Instead, it was little Emily, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. "What's all this about taxes?" she asked, looking around at the somber faces. Why do we have to give them our money? The room fell silent once more as everyone shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Thomas spoke up, his voice low but firm. It's not optional, child. The Lord demands a portion of our crops and livestock each year. It's how he keeps himself and the castle running. But why? Emily pressed on, her brow furrowed with confusion. Margaret leaned forward, her eyes softening as she spoke. You see, back in the day, before your grandfather was born even, the Lord would offer protection to our village in exchange for a share of what we produced. It was fair enough, I suppose. Thomas snorted. Unfair. The Lord's got no concept of fairness. He takes and takes, leaving us with barely enough to scrape by. As he spoke, his gaze drifted out the window towards the castle looming on its hilltop perch. The wind rustled through the thatched roofs of the nearby cottages, whispering secrets only known to those who lived within these stone walls. The night air seemed thick with unspoken tensions as each person's thoughts turned inward. Emily looked around at her family and neighbors, sensing a growing unease in their ranks. She didn't understand this system they lived under, why the Lord got so much while they worked from dawn till dusk to barely eke out enough for themselves. The fire crackled on, throwing eerie shadows as Thomas stood up, his massive frame towering over the room. We can't just keep giving them our hard-earned coins, he declared, his voice low but carrying across the space. They're taking more and more each year, leaving us with nothing but crumbs to scrape by. The room grew quiet once again as everyone's thoughts ran wild with possibilities. Some saw resistance, others whispered of rebellion. The air vibrated with tension, like a tightly drawn bowstring waiting for that single misstep. In the midst of this charged atmosphere, Margaret spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying an unmistakable resolve. We can't just sit idly by and watch our families starve while they grow fat off our labor. A murmur ran through the group as their faces hardened into determined lines. The fire seemed to ignite with renewed ferocity, casting shadows that danced like specters on the walls. It was a spark, small but fierce, that would soon set ablaze the simmering resentment within these village folk. They knew they couldn't keep paying taxes at this rate. It wasn't just their money they were giving up, it was hope itself. As the night wore on, whispers turned to murmurs and then to open talk of defiance. It wouldn't be long before a decision would need to be made, one that could have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. The scent of wood smoke wafts through the air, carrying with it the promise of a warm meal and a soft bed ahead. You are curled up on the edge of your pallet, listening to the gentle crackle of the fire in the hearth as you prepare for sleep. Your eyes feel heavy, weighed down by the long day's labor that has left its mark on every inch of your body. The task of tending to the Lord's gardens had been arduous, and now it seems like an eternity since you first rose with the sun. Your muscles ache in protest as you shift positions, trying to find a comfortable spot amidst the straw-stuffed mattress. As you lie there, you notice the soft glow of candlelight spilling into your chamber from the adjacent room, where your family huddles together for warmth and companionship. The gentle hum of conversation carries on the air, but it's muffled by the thick walls of the old stone cottage. Your gaze drifts to the nearby shelf, where a handful of well-worn candles sit, each one bearing an eerie familiarity, some bare scars from last week's fire, others still hold their original wax seals. You recall watching your sister carefully scrape away at those same marks with her fingers, hoping to coax out whatever hidden meaning lay within. Now, however, it's too late for such trivial pursuits. The weight of fatigue is crushing you down into the straw beneath. Your eyelids begin to droop, as if pulled by an unseen force towards the soft darkness beyond your lashes. Sleep claims you slowly but surely, drawing you under its gentle spell like a river carrying away pebbles. Days blend together in this quiet corner of medieval England. Routines established long ago become ingrained habits that barely register on any given day's consciousness. But amidst these monotonous rhythms lies the hidden thread of history. What stories lie embedded within those worn stone walls, bearing witness to countless generations coming and going? You are nestled into your bed once more, with sleep claiming you as its own. Your body feels heavy now, every joint screams in protest at even the smallest movement. It's only natural that one would succumb to such exhaustion after a day spent tending gardens under an unforgiving sun. Your mind wanders back through the events of this particular day. The early morning start, helping with the chores before breakfast. Your sister trying her hand at weaving on the loom while you helped nearby. Even now it seems impossible to recall exactly which tasks came when. Your thoughts are like leaves carried by a summer breeze. Your memories have been made hazy and obscure through too many days spent repeating similar routines, day after day. You've grown accustomed to living within such patterns. There is little room left for novelty or anything out of the ordinary in your life now, even though some things remain shrouded in mystery. As you struggle with fatigue's grip on your mind, a faint memory surfaces from earlier today, watching over the garden as it ripened under your care. You recall noticing how far away the other women worked at their own plots nearby. They seemed an eternity apart despite being but yards distant. Your gaze drifted between them and your own labor without ever really settling on one or another, much less attempting to join in. The memory recedes now, leaving you suspended within this twilight world where dreams hover close by yet never quite materialize. It's then that the dimness begins to take hold of everything around you, until even light itself appears muted and unimportant compared with sleep's call. Your breathing slows down gradually as your body yields completely to exhaustion's siren song. All tension is released in one long exhalation. You feel yourself letting go further still into this tranquil zone where only whispers remain from the world outside. The quiet grows thicker, spreading out like an advancing fog that swallows up everything not tied directly to you at the moment. Your sister quietly settling in for sleep on her own pallet nearby, the warm embers dying away under their own weight, both fading gradually into nothingness. Your chest rises now more slowly with each successive breath. In this quiet space, where thoughts barely hold sway and time feels as though it is losing all meaning, a fleeting image flits through your mind, an old record of tax assessments that somehow still haunts you from earlier today. You had caught glimpses of names scattered throughout its pages, those belonging to local landholders. The impression sticks in the back of your head like a stubborn weed refusing to be dislodged. Yet, for now at least, it lingers only as an afterthought within this somnambulant haze surrounding you. Your eyelids grow heavier still until sleep becomes a certainty. In its gentle grip, Even memories themselves fade into indistinct shapes that hover beyond the edge of your perception, and in their place comes complete oblivion. As you succumb to the void, your mind begins to unravel like the threads of an old tapestry. Memories that once seemed so vivid now dissolve into an amorphous mist, leaving only whispers of what was and will be again forgotten. The world outside recedes, its cacophony muffled by the blanket of slumber's silence. The distant rumble of horse hooves on cobblestone streets grows fainter still, until it is naught but a fading echo in your mind. In this realm beyond wakefulness, you find yourself wandering through an endless expanse of shadowy corridors and musty-scented chambers. The air clings heavy with the weight of centuries past, its dusty particles suspended like motes of gold in the faint, flickering light that filters through grimy windows. You drift towards a door worn smooth by generations of use, which creaks open to reveal a room unlike any you've known before. Shelves upon shelves stretch up to vaulted ceilings, laden with parchment scrolls and leather-bound books whose covers are embossed in gold leaf. The musty scent is overpowering here, redolent as the very essence of forgotten knowledge. Your gaze falls on a tome bound in worn, cracked black leather, adorned with strange symbols that seem to writhe like living serpents across its surface. As you reach out to touch it, a figure stirs from the shadows at your elbow, an elderly scribe, eyes narrowed behind thick spectacles as he inspects his work. "Ah, good morrow," he says in a low, gravelly voice, not looking up from his task. "I see you're one of those lost souls who stumble into our library by chance. Be warned, the books within these walls hold secrets best left unspoken." You feel a shiver run down your spine as his words conjure images of forbidden knowledge and ancient powers that lurk just beyond the edge of understanding. As you stand there entranced by the scribe's quiet intensity, a faint memory stirs within the depths of your mind, a fragmentary recollection of the Domesday book. Vague impressions of quills scratching parchment, of officials poring over ledgers and tax records in candlelit scriptoriums. But it is not just any recollection that surfaces, it is one tinged with unease and foreboding. You recall a sense of disquiet among the villagers as they spoke of women's roles within their community, or rather, the lack thereof. Women, you whisper to yourself, your voice lost in the musty silence of the library. What role did they play? The scribe looks up from his work, his eyes narrowing behind those thick spectacles. Ah, yes, women and the Domesday book. A most complicated topic indeed. He pauses, collecting his thoughts as he sets aside his quill. "Come," he says finally, beckoning you towards a shelf where a collection of leather-bound volumes seems to be waiting. "Let us walk among these pages together, and perhaps I may shed some light upon the subject that troubles your mind. But first, let us take a stroll through the village beyond this library's walls, for it is there we shall uncover the threads which weave women into the very fabric of our society." As he leads you from the musty confines of the library towards the bright sunlight outside, you feel the weight of centuries settling upon your shoulders. The world unfolds before you like a tapestry rich with hidden meanings and foreboding secrets waiting to be unraveled. Your journey has just begun in this strange new realm, one where women hold a power that remains shrouded in mystery, yet tantalizingly within reach. The scent of wood smoke wafts through the air, carrying with it memories of warmth and comfort from a long-forgotten hearth. Your senses are slowly stirring as you settle into this medieval world, where life moves at a pace dictated by the sun's gentle rise in the east. You're lying on a worn pallet, feeling the soft give beneath your shoulders as you shift to get comfortable. The straw mattress is surprisingly clean and free of lice, a testament to the diligence of the local housekeeper. As you stretch, the thatched roof above creaks softly, its wooden beams groaning under the weight of generations past. The fire crackles in the nearby hearth, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls as it slowly dies down for the night. You can feel the warmth seeping from the embers, like a gentle caress on your skin. The room is quiet, except for the occasional hoot of an owl outside and the soft snoring of the other travelers. Your journey has just begun in this strange new realm, one where women hold a power that remains shrouded in mystery, yet tantalizingly within reach. As you rise from your pallet to join the others by the fire, you notice a commotion at the entrance. A young apprentice is arguing with the village elder about something, their voices hushed but urgent. The elder's face is stern as he waves his staff in emphasis, while the apprentice looks like she's about to burst into tears. You can't quite catch what they're saying, but it sounds like a dispute over food or supplies of some sort. The air is thick with tension, and you wonder if this might be a recurring problem, perhaps one that you'll have to navigate in order to survive. As the argument dies down, the apprentice storms off into the darkness outside, leaving behind an awkward silence. You take advantage of the lull to pour yourself a mug of ale from the nearby jug, feeling the cool liquid soothe your parched throat as it's handed around by one of the village women. She catches your eye and smiles, her eyes crinkling at the corners. As you sip your ale, you notice that everyone seems to be lingering near the fire, reluctant to retire for the night just yet. You wonder if there's something on their minds, perhaps some local news or gossip that they're hesitant to share in front of outsiders. Your hosts seem friendly enough, but it's clear that there are boundaries here too. You take another sip of ale and lean back against a nearby pillar, feeling the rough stone press into your shoulders as you get comfortable. The darkness outside seems to be growing more pronounced now, with only an occasional flash of firelight illuminating the trees beyond the window. You can hear the distant howl of wolves, their haunting cries echoing through the night air like a lonely lullaby. As you settle in for what promises to be a long and eventful night, you start to notice that everyone's eyes keep drifting towards the village elder, as if waiting for some sign or signal from him. You glance over at his face, seeing that he seems lost in thought now, staring into the embers of the dying fire. You wonder what weighs on his mind, perhaps something connected to the apprentice's argument earlier. As you ponder this, a small figure stirs from where it had been lying nearby, yawns and stretches before climbing down onto its bare feet. It looks like one of the younger villagers, with an expression that says they're about to embark on some sort of adventure. The air is filled with an almost imperceptible tension now, as if everyone's waiting for this young person to do something, or perhaps just waiting for them to get out of the way so things can settle down. You watch in curiosity as the figure ambles over towards a nearby corner, where some sort of wooden chest seems to be hidden away. The elder speaks up finally, his voice low and measured. "You'll want to keep an eye on that child," he says, nodding towards the younger villager now rummaging through the chest. His eyes flicker over at you before focusing back on the others in the room, as if warning them about something. As the night wears on, the sounds of snoring and murmured conversations grow more pronounced, filling the air with a soothing background hum that's almost hypnotic. You find yourself swaying gently to one side, feeling your eyelids droop like they're weighted down by heavy stones. It seems you'll be here for a while longer yet, caught in this strange web of medieval life, where nothing is straightforward and everything feels slightly off-kilter. You yawn once more, feeling the dryness spread across your tongue as your mouth opens wide. The darkness beyond the fire seems to grow thicker now, taking on an almost palpable texture like it's something you can reach out and touch. As the last wisps of light fade away, leaving only inky blackness behind, you let yourself drift further down into sleep, lulled by the sound of distant wolves and the quiet hum of conversation drifting from the room beyond your own. Later on that night, you're lying flat on a narrow bed, feeling the weight of a heavy woolen blanket pressed against you like it's trying to keep something at bay. The air is cool and still now, almost eerily so, as if time itself has slowed down in anticipation of something. You can feel your chest rising and falling with each slow breath, the sound echoing through an empty room that seems far too quiet. There was a commotion earlier, you remember vaguely, some sort of dispute or argument about food supplies. As you try to piece together what happened, a faint memory surfaces, someone speaking quietly in hushed tones near the fire. It seemed serious at the time, but now it's all just a haze. You turn your head slowly towards the sound of a nearby door creaking open, the wooden slats groaning softly as they're pushed back into place. A figure slips inside, their footsteps light and careful on the stone floor beneath. You can't quite see who it is yet, but you sense that this person is trying to be quiet. Your heart beats slightly faster now as you strain to hear any other sounds, perhaps something more urgent or alarm-raising. But there's only silence outside your room, broken by an occasional hoot from a distant owl. It seems the world has slowed down once again, holding its breath in anticipation of what might come next. As you lie here in darkness, listening for anything out of place, you begin to wonder if this sense of quiet is actually some sort of sign, perhaps a warning that something's about to change. You can feel your mind stirring now, piecing together bits and pieces from earlier conversations. That argument over food supplies. The elder's words. It all seems like there might be more going on here than meets the eye. The person outside is still trying to move quietly, but their footsteps are getting slower now, as if they're listening in just like you are. You wonder who this could be and what they want, perhaps some sort of messenger or informant. As your heart beats a little faster with anticipation, the figure finally slips back out into the darkness outside, leaving behind an unsettling silence. You lie here for several more minutes, trying to make sense of it all as the quiet stretches on. It's almost like time itself is frozen, waiting for some unknown event or signal that will set everything off once again. As you drift further down into sleep, your mind still racing with half-remembered details and unclear intentions, a single phrase lingers in your mind. How many feudal lords died from eating too much sausage? The sound of distant wolves is the last thing you remember as consciousness slips away. As you succumb to the alluring darkness, the sound of distant wolves grows fainter, their haunting howls gradually giving way to an eerie silence. Your mind, still reeling from the bizarre phrase that refuses to be shaken, starts to wander down paths both familiar and unknown. You find yourself standing in a bustling market square, surrounded by villagers clad in tattered tunics and cloaks, their faces etched with worry and fatigue. The air is thick with the smell of smoke and sweat, and the sound of hammering on metal echoes through the narrow alleys that crisscross the village. A nearby vendor, his face a mass of scars and wrinkles, catches your eye as he expertly butchers a bloated pig carcass. You watch in morbid fascination as he hacks off chunk after chunk of fatty meat, his hands moving with practiced ease despite the sweat-drenched gloves he wears. "Good sir, would you like some sausage?" he asks, holding out a steaming link that reeks of overcooked pork and stale spices. His eyes glint with a knowing spark, as if daring you to take a bite. You hesitate for an instant before snatching the offering from his hand. The first bite is a revelation, rich, savory, and so deliciously wrong that it defies comprehension. Your senses reel in protest as your taste buds recoil from the cloying sweetness and greasy texture, yet somehow you can't help but take another, then another. The vendor chuckles knowingly, his eyes glinting with a hint of amusement. "Told you it'd be good," he says, winking at an unseen companion who's no doubt sharing in your predicament. Your dazed reverie is shattered by the sudden appearance of a group of rough-looking men-at-arms, their armor battered and worn from years of service to various lordly households. They glance around with an air of practiced menace before zeroing in on you. The vendor at their side now holds up his sausages like some sort of macabre trophy. "We've heard there's a new noble come through these parts," one of them growls, eyeing your half-eaten sausage as if it might be evidence of some hidden guilt. "Word has it he'd rather not eat with the common folk." You realize with growing unease that you must have stumbled into this village under false pretenses, perhaps even claiming to be a lord yourself in some misguided attempt at social climbing. "Ah, good sirs," you stammer, trying to deflect suspicion by feigning an air of dignified concern. "I assure you I am not some noble come to play at lordling games with the local folk." But it's too late, your flimsy excuse falls flat as one of the soldiers spots a faint emblem on your tunic, a crude, hand-drawn image of a snarled snake devouring its own tail. The symbol sends them into fits of laughter and gasping, their cackling echoing through the village like some sort of mocking incantation. "By all that's holy," one of them roars, doubling over in mirth as he clutches at his midsection. "This is no lord we've got here. He wears the mark of a lunatic." As they descend upon you with guffaws and pointed jibes, your mind reels back to those three words that started it all. How many feudal lords died from eating too much sausage? It's then you realize farcically, inescapably, that this whole ordeal is some sort of bizarre test. You're not a noble, you're the pawn in some medieval prank gone hilariously wrong. With your pride battered and your dignity bruised, you raise your hands to surrender as one of the villagers begins enthusiastically churning out tales of previous lords, who came to similar ends after devouring an excessive amount of sausage. Tonight you've traveled through the mist-shrouded kitchens of medieval England, where a lone toad sat on a pile of rotting food like a specter from another realm. Shadows danced across the walls as we unraveled the mystery of the missing grooms, their whispers carried away by distant fires that flickered in the darkness like candles on an altar. The tides of time ebbed and flowed through your journey, washing over you with tales of salted fish heads left to rot, a day without fire a thing unthinkable, and the weight of woolen tunics worn heavy as heartaches. At its core, tonight's journey has woven together disparate threads: hunger, loss, superstition, and hardship, revealing the thin line between survival and despair. This fragile balance was the constant heartbeat that pulsed through every tale, reminding us that in a world where death lurked around every corner, even the smallest acts of defiance could be transformative. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey into the labyrinthine streets of history. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from, perhaps on a quiet night, surrounded by ancient stones or under a star-studded sky. As you drift toward sleep, let your thoughts unravel like threads pulled loose from a tapestry. The details sink below the surface of thought, carried away by the dark and quiet that takes over. Like the earth itself, memory wears its secrets patiently, etching them into its ancient skin as time whispers stories to stones.